Hello and welcome to Purely Academic, your potentially educational podcast. This is the topic episode for June 2025. I'm Dr. Jonathan Lack. I write about movies. I teach cinema studies at the University of Colorado, and I am officially siding with Dr. Doom in two of the three Fantastic Four continuities we're discussing today.
And I'm Sean Chapman, high school English teacher by day, otaku by night, and I'm excited to talk about three Fantastic Four movies today. And then there's whatever this fourth movie we're talking about is. I don't know what it is. It's not a Fantastic Four movie, but you put a fourth movie that's on this docket, and I watched it, but it wasn't a Fantastic Four movie.
One, we agreed on the docket. I didn't put anything anywhere. Two,
fair enough.
Two, I don't think it even qualifies as a movie, let alone a Fantastic Four movie. And we are also today talking about a movie that looks like it was created by rejects from a student film school. And that's not the one I'm referring to here, because this is such a crazy topic. Sean, we are today talking about the most cursed franchise in all of superhero live-action cinema, I think it is fair to say. And that is Fantastic Four, in an episode we're calling Fantastic 4x4. We have the fifth attempt to do Fantastic Four on screen coming out this July with the Fantastic Four First Steps, the first Marvel Cinematic Universe entry with the characters, and the first one that looks like it's genuinely engaged with the overall mythos of the Fantastic Four. But, before we're getting this new one with Pedro Pascal and all his friends, we have four other Fantastic Fours to talk about. We have the 1994 movie that was never officially released, for obvious reasons, but you can go find it, and you should, because it's very funny. We have the two Tim Story movies, Fantastic Four 2005 and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer from 2007. Those are the ones that were, honestly, the most honest, good old college try that they have made. They're fine. Yeah. We'll talk about that. And then we have something called Fant Four Stick, directed by a real fuck-up named Josh Trank, who has not directed at a Hollywood studio again since, for very obvious reasons, because I think that is, without peer, the worst superhero movie ever made. I'd not even, you can name whatever else you want to me, Superman 3, Batman v Superman, Amazing Spider-Man 2, different planes of existence. That is how bad that movie is. We're going to talk about all of them.
Yes, yeah. In Fan Four Stick, so I finished Fan Four Stick less than 24 hours ago. I watched it last night, and it is...
Do you agree with my assessment, Sean?
Yes. I mean, we'll obviously get into it when we get to that movie, but it's arguably not a superhero movie until it's like, oh fuck, we have to be a superhero movie, so we have to do the last 30 minutes, have to have a giant laser shooting into the sky, and we have to have people do superhero poses on screen. It is the most at war with itself adaptation I have ever seen of any comic book subject matter, to the point where I struggle to consider it a superhero film. And it's not good regardless, but it is kind of a fascinating movie in that specific dimension.
Yeah. So look, the history of Fantastic Four on screen is fascinating. It shouldn't be this hard. They're not that, and there is one great Fantastic Four movie that we're not talking about today, and it's called The Incredibles by Pixar. Right, and that's I've always wondered how much The Incredibles coming out in 2004, and then the Tim Story movie starting in 2005, how much The Incredibles just threw a wrench in all of that, because The Incredibles has the 60s, futurist aesthetic. It has the family dynamic really strong. It has all the gadgets and everything. It has everything other than the named characters. It has all of that. And then I feel
got two of the four powers are the same,
Yes. And if you include the baby Jack, he basically becomes Johnny Storm at the end. So we're there, the gang's all there, and it's just, and it is kind of funny. That's the one that's gotten it right. But is not technically a Fantastic Four movie, and then you've got all of these, and, the only one I have real antipathy towards is the 2015 one. I think the other ones are varying degrees of fucking hilarious, the 1994 movie, to, that's fine, I've seen much worse. But, it is fascinating how something that really should not be that complicated has become so complicated over 30 years of movies.
Yeah, and it's always just fascinating when you think about the history of Fantastic Four, because for people who don't know, Fantastic Four is the Marvel comic book in terms of, that's Fantastic Four #1 is the first Marvel comic book when Timely Comics became Marvel. It's the one that sort of innovated what was known as the Marvel method of comics, with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Stan Lee doing, obviously, the dialogue, Jack Kirby doing the art, but the Marvel method involved basically the artist of the book creating the art and the panels off of an agreed overall storyline, and then the writer coming in and putting in the dialogue after. But it was also the thing that sort of created that Marvel style of going away from these sorts of invulnerable, kind of like Titanic superheroes that were forces for pure good and could do no wrong, for whom their weakness was something like kryptonite, rather than the Fantastic Four were very human people. Who had human foibles and human difficulties, and their weaknesses were things like their temper, their emotional weaknesses, things like that. And so it was just a revolutionary comic book for 1961, and is the thing that built the House of Marvel. And it has just always felt weird that it has never really gotten that proper adaptation, especially because it feels like it should work really well. Like, it feels like it shouldn't be that hard to do. But it just has, like the 2005, 2007 movie are not terrible. And it gets some of the appeal of the Fantastic Four, but just nothing has ever really kind of landed the whole ship appropriately. And as someone who is a fan of those old comic books, particularly the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby ones, it is very weird watching the movies being like, why can nobody do this? Why, how do we end up at Fanforstic in 2015 is a real tragedy.
Yes. Well, and it is just so weird, because I do think there is an alternate timeline where Sam Raimi didn't get Spider-Man, but he got Fantastic Four, and he hit that out of the park instead, right? Like, that's the tone that these need. The Tim Story movies, to their credit, are clearly modeled after the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And I think, like, they understand parts of it. I think they are just, the fundamental thing with those is they are so limited in their scope, in kind of their, what they kind of imagine with these characters, that it never has kind of the boldness or confidence or depth that Sam Raimi, who's a, really substantive filmmaker, brings to it. But, like, they were directionally correct. I think the big problem with those movies is they didn't make a ton of money, and then 2007, 1 year later, is when The Dark Knight comes out, and no one's making Sam Raimi-style superhero movies anymore. Yes. So, like, fantastic, and that leads very clearly to 2015's Fantastic Four, of like, what's the gritty, realistic version of Fantastic Four we can do? Which is a question that should get you laughed out of the room, not given $100 million to make a superhero movie, but we live in the dumb timeline, as you may have noticed from just gestures broadly at everything. So yeah, it's wild, and it is just hilarious that we have, these four movies, two of which really aren't even finished movies, one of which was unfinished and not released, and then the two that are finished and released, I think get a bad rap. They are by no means the worst superhero movies out there, like, not even close.
Oh, no, yeah, like, the Tim Story ones, I enjoyed rewatching those. Like, I think they have a good, a good cast for for the Fantastic Four. They do a good job. It gets the characters, it gets the appeal of the property. Doctor Doom is a huge problem in those movies. I think it's a very bad version of him, and we'll talk about that. But it's like, it's you, for me as a fan of the old comic books, I watch those two movies and I'm like, yes, this, like, I get, it makes you want to go read some Fantastic Four comic books, and like, as it, that's at least a bare minimum kind of adaptational thing for me. If I'm a fan of the source material, it kind of helps reignite some of that love I have for the source material, because it gets those pockets correct. I think it's just like the big picture story that they're telling with the Fantastic Four, and neither of those movies really kind of lands. Like, the themes never really land. Like, that's the extra Sam Raimi step that they don't get, is that kind of bringing it all together to one cohesive, larger narrative that's making a bigger thematic point with the characters and having every character arrive at, like, a satisfying character arc. It doesn't really nail that part, but it's a total, I think both of them are entertaining movies for what they are.
Yes, I think that's true. So, how do you want to dive into these, Sean? Do you want to go one movie at a time? Do you want to talk about them? Let's say one movie at a time is probably the right way to do this.
Yes, because they're all very well. So obviously the Tim Story ones are similar, but these are three different flavors of Fantastic Four, and three different flavors of movie for three different decades. You gotta have to take them in chunks.
Although, okay, before we go into them one at a time, one other overall trend I want to say, though, is that, so there are four movies, but three, like, continuities here.
Yes.
And I do think it is funny that every 10 years, 94, 2005, 2015, now 2025, the 2025 one looks like it's going to be a different thing. But the 94, 2005, and 2015, as different as all those movies are, they fundamentally want to tell the same story, which is the Fantastic Four origin story, tying Doctor Doom into the origin story, and then having Doom emerge as the villain for the last act. Honestly, what I think is funny is that the 1994 movie, I think on a scripting level, is by far the most competent at that. Like, in terms of, like, laying out the, like actually establishing Doctor Doom, actually having some kind of follow-through on how the first act ties into the second, into the third. But it is, like, there is a certain repetition that set in for me watching all these of, like, God, like, one, you don't need to do a Fantastic Four origin story movie. That's like the last superhero group on Earth where I need to see, like, the cosmic rays hit them. One of the best things about the 2005 movie is that it gets that out of the way in, like, literally 10 minutes and just gets into the main stuff. But, like, this isn't Spider-Man where, like, his origin story includes the Uncle Ben thing that is key to his motivations. You don't need to tell me how they got Fantastic Fourified. You just need to tell me a story. And I think it's not a, like, accident that the best of these four movies by far is Rise of the Silver Surfer, which is the only one that is actually, they're the Fantastic Four at the beginning of the movie.
Yes, like I'm 100% with you that Rise of the Silver Surfer is the best one, almost entirely on the back of the fact that it is just gets to be a Fantastic Four movie for the entire runtime. Yeah, because it's a good point to raise about the, like, they're all trying to tell basically that same origin story, especially because it's like if you read Fantastic Four #1, which I recommend you do, it's a great comic book, and it's like a, you know, it's a trailblazing comic book. Like, the Fantastic Four doesn't have that kind of origin story. They do not have the Spider-Man style origin story. Like, Fantastic Four #1, the origin is told in medias res, because it is like the mole men are attacking the surface world because they're fucking mole men, whatever. And then you have the four Fantastic Four, who at this point the reader does not know who they are. They're all these four mysterious people at different places in New York City, all kind of come together where there's, like, the four signal comes in the sky, and they all assemble together to fight the mole men. And in that process, you get flashbacks that tell you the origin story, which is super basic. The origin story is the moon landing hasn't happened yet because it's 1961. So all we need to say is, space is weird. If you go into space, you'll get superpowers. It's like the extent of it. It's like we went into space and there were cosmic rays because we need to beat those damn Soviets. And like, we all got weird superpowers. And, like, that truly is as far as the origin goes. Doctor Doom is not involved in the origin of the Fantastic Four, which I feel like is a thing that probably a lot of people are surprised by because it is such a sort of fixation on adaptations. Understandably so. I get it. I get why you want to simplify things by throwing him in there. But Doctor Doom's whole thing is unrelated to where the Fantastic Four get their powers. And I just feel like that is, and it seems to be that based on the trailers, that is likely something like that is what this new movie is going to do. Like, clearly they are the Fantastic Four for, like, that whole movie, and the trailers indicate to me that it is probably either, like, a credit sequence or a flashback or something that shows you them getting the powers. But it is funny to me that, like, Fantastic Four #1 lays out as a comic book like a really dynamic, cool introduction for all of these characters that would be like a good 10-minute opener to a movie or something. And we had 3 different cracks at it, and none of those movies took it. And it's like we all, like, you don't have to reinvent the wheels, guys. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee already showed you a really cool way to introduce all 4 of these characters in medias res, in a cool action scene that showcases all of their powers and all that, and gets the simple explanation of their powers out of the way, because the Fantastic Four don't have a great power, great responsibility moment. Their whole thing is about the dynamic of the team and their family dynamic, and you just need to get into that as soon as you can. And that's something that Rise of the Silver Surfer is the only movie that succeeds at that, really. Like, Fantastic Four 2005 does a whatever job at it because it gets through it relatively quickly, but still has to do a lot of, like, they're learning all their power stuff. And it is a fairly tedious part of this process of watching all 4 of these movies is the, like, okay, we got to do another, here's how Doctor Doom gets involved, here's all this stuff, okay, now they have their powers, now they do this, like, oh my god, look, I can turn on fire. It's like, yes, you know, like, please, like, I don't want to watch an entire movie to get to the point where the Human Torch goes, flame on! Like, I don't need that buildup. I'm fine with him just being a guy who says flame on and turns it to fire and flies around and throws fireballs at stuff. It's okay.
Yes. And, like, this is one place where I very much trust Kevin Feige and the MCU, because one thing they've been good at is knowing when you need the origin story, like Iron Man or Captain America, because it's, like, key to who they are, and when you need to just get into the action, right? Like, and I think Fantastic Four, obviously, the new one looks like Sue and Reed are already married, they're having a kid, like, they're in the status quo, and I'm just like, oh, thank fucking God. We don't have to do this again. I don't want to see it. And I don't need to see Sue and Reed fall in love again. None of that stuff. Just get to the meat of it. This is so stupid. But, all right. With that out of the way, Sean, do you want to get into the 1994 movie just called The Fantastic Four, four spelled out?
Yes. So before we get into it, we should probably talk a little bit about, like...
the history of it?
What the fuck is this movie even, Jonathan?
Okay. So what is this movie? Well, this movie is that so this movie came out in 1994. About 11 years earlier, in 1983, there was a German producer named Bernd Eichinger who met with Stan Lee in L.A. trying to option the Fantastic Four. That option eventually came into being a few years later in the 1980s, and Eichinger and his production company, Constantine Film, obtained the license for what has been estimated to be about $250,000, because comic book movies weren't a thing yet. Remember, like, this is the mid-'80s. Yes. Batman hasn't come out yet. There was Superman, but Superman was not followed by a bunch of comic book movies. Batman is the one that starts the trend.
Yeah, the closest thing you have at this point for Marvel is, like, they've done some, like, TV movies. Like, there's some Captain America TV movies. I don't know if the Incredible Hulk TV show would have been a thing yet, but that was the live-action Incredible Hulk TV show. So even when we get to 1994 with this unreleased movie, at that point, Marvel in live action was not really a thing outside of that Incredible Hulk show, which is, like, kind of an interesting footnote about this, is that it would have been their first foray into proper live action film adaptations of their stuff that didn't end up actually happening until Blade would have been the first one.
Right. I mean, you're forgetting Japanese Spider-Man, but,
Sure, if we count Japanese Spider-Man with Leopardon and all that, sure, we can throw him in there in the conversation as well.
All right. So this company now, Constantine Films, obtains the license, and Constantine Films is one of the producers on all the movies we're talking about today. The new MCU one will be the first Fantastic Four movie not produced by this company, because they held the rights through this whole period, through the Fox era as well. So there were some studios that were maybe interested in doing this, but nobody really wanted to put in the money to make a true Fantastic Four movie. The option on the license was set to expire at the end of 1992. They tried to get an extension from Marvel. They couldn't get an extension. So this is where the history diverges depending on who you're talking about. But at least everyone can agree that this movie was produced to keep that license alive. And because they had to do it independently, because no studio was signing on, they decided to do it low budget. They team up with Roger Corman, the B-movie icon, and his whole company to produce the movie for a low $1 million budget. And they begin principal photography 3 days before the license runs out. The license is going to run out December 31st, 92. They start shooting December 28th, 1992, and they shoot for 25 days, a little under a month. Then this is where the history diverges, because the question has always been, was this movie ever intended for release? And everybody has had different stories about this, basically, about whether or not the movie was ever actually intended to come out, or whether it was just made to keep the license alive. Now, obviously, if you just said, hey, we're just going to make this movie to keep the option, I believe that would be some kind of fraud. Like, if you said from the outset, we're going to make this and bury it, that would clearly, I feel like that would be breaking, I'm not a lawyer, but that has to be breaking some kind of legal agreement. So they couldn't say, we're making this to be buried. But they shoot the movie. The film is in post-production for a long time. It was initially scheduled for release on Labor Day weekend 1993. There were some trailers for the movie released at this time that you can go find online. It was pushed back again. I love this detail. The world premiere was announced to take place at the Mall of America in Minnesota on January 19th, 1994, with proceeds from the event earmarked for the Ronald McDonald House and Children's Miracle Network. But at that point, the premiere was halted. The actors received a cease and desist order on all promotion from the producers, and the studio confiscated the negatives. And what had happened is that initial producer, Eichinger, the German guy who's in head of Constantine Film, he basically came in and informed everybody that the movie was not going to be released, and they basically bought the rights back and buried it. And there have been different stories ever since. There were some people who have said that, no, we absolutely intended to make it, we wanted to release it, but that something happened. Other people, like Stan Lee, has said that he firmly believes that movie was never supposed to be shown to anybody, and that's what he was told. I think one of the versions that I do kind of believe is that Eichinger, who would have been the person making this call, later said that in 1993, before the movie's original release date, Avi Arad, who was a Marvel executive who would later be the founder of Marvel Studios, the film division, called and said, so this is a quote, "Listen, I think what you did was great. It shows your enthusiasm for the movie and the property, and I understand that you've invested so much, and Roger has invested so much. Let's do a deal." Because he really didn't like the idea that a small movie was coming out and maybe ruining the franchise. So he says to me that he wants to give me back the money we spent on the movie and that we should not release it. And so that version seems to be actually the most corroborated, because Avi Arad has said something kind of similar later on, when he did not know that the movie was even coming out until he was on a trip to Puerto Rico in 1993, when he saw somebody. Or when somebody saw him with a Fantastic Four shirt and then was confused, saying, "I didn't know there was a movie coming out," and that made him think about how a low-budget movie nobody knew about would maybe cheapen the brand, and he was worried about the future of Marvel Studios. So who knows? Those are all the versions people have said. I will say, when I finally sat down and watched the movie, I'm torn. It's hard for me to imagine that anyone thought this thing was releasable at any point in any state. Now, to be fair, the movie is clearly unfinished. The sound mix is not done. That's one very obvious thing. And we are seeing it basically on VHS rips of a work print that were bootlegged, not like the 35mm masters that are in the proper aspect ratio and everything. So it is a little hard to gauge. But I do think this movie, if you told me nothing else, if you didn't tell me any of that other history, but you just told me the thing about they made it for $1 million to keep the license alive, I would look at this movie and go, this movie is very funny and sometimes very entertaining to watch, but no, they absolutely did not plan to release this. This does not look like a releasable movie to me.
Yeah, especially for Marvel, which spent a lot of time trying to find ways to break into that kind of live action world. That's why they had lots of these different attempts with weird TV movies, and they had some of their TV shows, including the Japanese Spider-Man Sentai show. I definitely believe the idea that and I think it probably was right to say look at this and say this will cheapen the brand. This could poison the water. In what was already, by the time you're in the mid-90s, a weird time for superhero movies. It's the thing watching this movie is it does just feel like you're watching a Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode without the Mystery Science Theater 3000 part. You stumbled on one of those really obscure weird movies and you're just watching it fucking raw. It truly is that kind of real, properly low budget Roger Corman ass B movie. But also one that is still trying to do Fantastic Four. There are some effects in it that are kind of impressive for what it is, and for the fact that if we tried really hard, Jonathan, we could scrounge together $1 million to make a movie. We could do that if we really committed to doing it. That's not an unachievable thing to do. And so it's there is some stuff here that is impressive and cool in that B movie kind of way, but also the sensibilities of the movie with the weird leprechaun guy and that whole B plot and all that shit. You're just what the fuck? This movie's it really is just that kind of film. And it is it is a kind of movie where if you basically tell someone, oh, this was a Roger Corman produced Fantastic Four movie made for $1 million to just that they never wanted to release it just to keep the license alive, and it came out in 1994. I feel like if you say that sentence to someone and they understand what all of the parts of that sentence mean, you've already watched the movie. Like, you've seen that movie in your head, and watching it on like the VHS work print version or whatever is just a formality at that point to confirm that the movie is 100% exactly the movie you have already imagined in your mind.
I mean, it's really amateurish, even by the, like, Roger Corman standards. And you know, to be clear, Roger Corman was also a producer of big, real movies.
Yes.
And he brought over a lot of foreign films. A huge legacy. Roger Corman is really important to American film. And he didn't make this movie, he just produced it. But, like, even by those standards, like, this is really amateurish. It is, like, genuinely, Sean, I started watching on one version, and I had to go try to find a better version because I couldn't see people's faces, and I couldn't understand any of the dialogue. And I did finally find there's a version
first scene in the college, in particular, is, like, indecipherable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did find a version on YouTube that someone had done, like, a proper restoration of what elements we do have, and that was, like, perfectly acceptable. I could watch that version and understand most of it, but, like, it's kind of tough to find an even watchable version of this, because, again, the parts of it are just unfinished. I will give the movie credit for this. I actually think, compared to the other two origin story movies, like, I think doing the thing where they split the Victor Von Doom origin into one thing and then go 10 years forward and do the Fantastic Four separately and have Doom kind of pulling the strings behind them as the big bad, I think is actually a better cinematic structure than the other two Fantastic Four origin story movies have. I think just straight up, this version of Dr. Doom is, like, so much better than the other ones.
Yes.
Both because he is very funny. Like, they have him in the mask. He's just talking behind the mask. They didn't ADR any of it, so he's super muffled, which is very funny. And he's so extra. He starts in the second half of the movie doing sign language on everything he says. Like, not actual ASL, but he starts miming all of his words. It's very, very funny. His evil laugh is awesome. I kind of love this Dr. Doom. It's stupid, but it's fun. And so all of those, like, steps, like, I actually think you could take this script and put an actual budget behind it. And I'm not saying you would have a great movie. You would still have weird stuff like the little leprechaun jeweler dude. But, like, that part of it is not anywhere near as incompetent as I thought it would be. Where the movie falls apart is in the production values. I think the main four actors playing the Fantastic Four are bad and don't do any emoting, and I don't know anything about any of them as characters. They're mostly unrecognizable as human beings, let alone these four human beings. And so all of that just falls completely flat. Although I will say, I think for a $1 million low-budget production, I think the Thing prosthetic looks pretty good. And I think the stretchy arm moments from Reed Richards are actually really fun, and to be perfectly honest, look better than the CGI stretchy arms in the 2005 or 2015 movie. I will plant my flag there right now.
Yes, that was the thing I was most excited by with this movie. The two things. One is, as shameful as it is to say for those other fucking movies, this is easily the best Doctor Doom. It's, you know, it's a certain flavor of Doctor Doom that you will get if you read the comics, you know, like, it's not the flavor I would ideally want of Doctor Doom. Like, I want my hyper-competent, this is the king of Latveria. He's like, you know...
He is the king of Latveria in this movie. They keep calling him Your Highness. It's just he's the king of a country where he apparently has 2 bumbling hench people and no other resources, which is very funny.
Yes, this is like Doctor Doom as a member of Team Rocket. You know, it's like that kind of cartoonish villain. There's like, you failed me again. Richards is kind of like the vibe he gives off, which is fine. It's not like ideally the version of Doctor Doom I would like is a more serious version of the character, because Doctor Doom from the comics, if you do that, could be super fucking cool. But this is a mode that Doctor Doom can work in, is your Saturday cartoon villain, like, you've discovered my master plan and all that kind of shit. And it is 100% true that what they do here with his origin is way better. It's a lot closer to the comics from what I recall, where, you know, Doctor Doom is a character that's introduced later in Fantastic Four stuff, and obviously there's, like, you have decades of retcons and all that kind of shit. So like what is or is not the origin of various characters in Marvel Comics is an impossible question to actually answer. Remember that, originally Captain America was, encased in ice in World War II and was brought out of ice in the 1960s.
Right.
So that, the origins change as time goes on because that's how this shit works. But generally speaking, it is you later learn that he and Richards knew each other in college and there were like accidents, and then he went and like met like a Tibetan monk or fucking, there's more stuff in the comics. But it's something closer to this, and I do think it works better. It's just like a cleaner way to bring Doom into the action because you don't have to have your villain slowly learn his powers alongside everybody else. It just it makes those other movies very shapeless in terms of what the antagonist is and what the antagonist is doing. And it's one of the things that makes the climax of those later origin movies really kind of awkward and clumsy, is because you don't really feel like Doctor Doom has been properly set up as a bad guy, which, he's, there's not a lot going on with him as a bad guy in this movie, but there's no question. He's the bad guy. He's sitting in his, skull castle with his two henchmen, and he has his, evil schemes that he is, doing, and he's doing his evil laugh like he's the bad guy, and they have to stop him. And that stuff is very fun. The other thing that I do love is just seeing a movie do the stretchy effects with in-camera practical effects. That's fucking cool. Obviously by the time you get to 2005 in the history of, Hollywood filmmaking, no, sane director was going to do practical effects for that stuff, but fuck it, they should.
Yes.
Because it's just cooler. And I think the fact that this movie did it and a lot of those shots work really well shows how achievable it is. And that if you were a big budget movie with a really great special effects supervisor, with a really great prosthetics team and stuff like that, you could do some awesome, cool shots with the stretchy stuff, that can, there's certainly some things that the CGI can do, that the practical couldn't, but it's so hard for the CG to sell the concept, appropriately for the audience, and the practical effects do that so well. And it's a cool thing that this is the only movie Fantastic Four movie that will maybe ever do this. It's sad that that's where we're at, but it is cool when they do it, and the movie does it shockingly well.
Yes, and then, for Sue Storm, we get the tried and true, we just do a cut. She's there, and then we cut, and she's gone, and then maybe we do a little bit of a crossfade. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. That is an old silent movie trick to make someone invisible. Yeah. It's fine.
I was excited every time she turned invisible because you could tell 10 seconds before just by the way the shot was blocked. It's yes. Oh, she's going to have to turn invisible in a second here. Great. This is awesome.
Yes, they don't try to do any of her shield energy powers for understandable reasons, but there you go. Johnny Storm, they don't have him actually flame on until the very end, and then they do give it a try. They do try to have him flaming through the sky. It looks terrible, but in a kind of fun way. Otherwise, they just have fires start near him, and then have characters imply he started the fires, even though if you watch the movie on mute, you would have no way of understanding that he was responsible for the fire.
Yes, I do think the worst, but also most hilarious special effects shot in the movie is when Doctor Doom shoots his evil laser at New York City for
yes.
Doctor Doom reasons, and the Human Torch goes to fly and try and stop it. And you're like, well, how is he going to try and stop it? And then he just flies in front of the laser and just gets hit. And it's watching a video game and a character gets stun locked and he's just flipping back. It's
yes.
It's so fucking, it's the goofiest shit you've ever seen. And I love the idea that his plan was to stop the laser that's designed to blow up an entire city is, why don't I just get hit by it first? And for whatever reason, it won't kill me. He's very lucky he's one of the main characters of the movie, because by any reasonable standard, he should have been fucking evaporated, and the laser just would have kept going to New York City and blowing it up if it's supposed to be that powerful.
Yeah, I can buy that Johnny Storm, being a young little hothead, might do something like that. That's not so crazy. It's stupid on his part, but he's stupid, so that's fine. So you've got that, and then you've got the Thing, and this part, they do a baffling thing here where they have one actor play Ben Grimm. Then they have a different actor play him in the prosthesis. Now, that alone is not crazy, because sometimes prosthetic stunt acting is a different thing, but they also have the stunt actor do the voice, so his voice just completely he's just a different character in the second half of the movie, and I do think that prosthesis, like, looks good for the budget and everything, but it is so limiting, and it is hilarious how slow he has to talk and how, like, deliberately. But I do enjoy that they get him saying it's clobbering time, like, 2 or 3 times in the movie. It's very funny.
Well, yeah, it's got a real, like, low-budget version of the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Like, it's got, you know, and it's from that same time period, basically. So it's got that kind of look, where he's got, like, a mouth that moves, kind of. And it's sort of awkward. I was bummed out that they don't in this one. They do in the 2005 one, but they don't have him put on the big trench coat and hat, because that's a scene in the TMNT movie where Raphael does that, which in my mind is a Thing throwback, because that's what the Thing does, is he puts on a giant coat and a big hat, and he walks around in the street at New York City at night, and then someone sees him and freaks out and goes, "Oh, I'm sad because I'm the Thing," and that's what the Thing does.
Yes, absolutely. The 2005 movie will get that right, and that's fun. Yes. Because the 2005 movies actually do the Thing really, really well. So we'll talk about that later when we get there. But yes, so you've got your Fantastic Four. There are so many unintentionally hilarious moments in this movie. I like early on when all 4 of them are together at the Storm household, and they turn around as they're about to leave, and, like, Mrs. Storm looks at them and says, "You guys are the Fantastic Four." It's just... I was watching this with Thomas, my brother. He was playing Zelda on his Switch 2, because that's how I got him to agree to hang out with me to watch this movie. He made it about half an hour and then left. But anyway, by that point, we did rewind it because we were laughing so hard at the Fantastic Four comment. And I do like that comes back later, where they keep doing... And it's like, I don't really know the relationships between these 4 people. I'm a little skeeved out by the whole Reed knew Sue as a child, and seemingly, like, did he babysit for her or something? I don't know. Like, I know there's often an age gap between the 2 of them, but there's a difference between an age gap relationship where you meet as adults and an age gap relationships where you meet when one of you is a child. But, you know, put that aside for a minute. This is a very silly movie. I don't even know. We can't go, like, blow by blow through it, but it's very silly.
Yes. I do think it is worth commenting on some of the performances for what they are. I think my favorite performance, not to say that it's a good one, but it's the one that made me laugh the most, is Alex Hyde White as Reed Richards, who is the most like this dude fucking just down some NyQuil before any take, because it's so sedate and so mute. And there's just like really incredible shit going on, and he has the most blasé reactions. Like, and it starts super early in the movie as well. Because you have that moment with their origin where, you know, they've overcomplicated the origin of the Fantastic Four, as all these movies do, where there's like a giant diamond that they'd have for whatever reason, and you've got the Leprechaun Man who takes the diamond and replaces it with a fake diamond, and when Reed learns that, as their spaceship is like exploding around him, he sits there and goes, "The diamond is fake." And it's like, I feel like you could have a bit more of a reaction to that. And then after the spaceship crashes on the ground and he stands up, and, you know, they're on like a hillside in the middle of nowhere with like a little fire happening over there and some scraps of metal. That's the most they could show the spaceship has quote unquote crash landed. But he looks around at like the wreckage of his life's work and all that and goes, "What's going on here?" And that's about the amount of emotion that he can muster. And I just was very cracked up by how just unflappable this dude's performance was as Reed Richards in the most like inscrutable way of like, does this guy is this an actor? Is this an animatronic? That they're like the world's most realistic animatronic? Because I'm really not getting any emotion from this performance at all.
Oh, it's amazing. There's the best scene in this vein is when Sue, like, comes over and says, "Reed, I love you." And it cuts to him stone-faced, doesn't react for like 10 seconds. It's like the most nightmare version of a love confession. And then finally he says, like, "I feel the same way." And it's like, is this a scene from Dexter? Like, what is this? This is like, you could put fucking Michael C. Hall in here doing the same performance and it would come across as he's about to go kill some people with his rubber powers, not save them. It's amazing. Yeah. You also, like, you don't get even a hint of the, like, smartest man alive thing from him. The fact that it takes him half the movie to realize that Victor might have something to do with this, my favorite bit of that being like, "I don't recognize this language." And I'm like, you don't recognize the language of your former best friend and research partner of the country he hailed from? You don't you're the smartest man. I know they don't say that in this movie, but you're Reed Richards. You don't I'm not saying you're fluent in it, but like if you show me Arabic, I can recognize Arabic. You know, like I can recognize the language even if I can't read it, let alone if this was my best friend and research partner. It's very funny.
Yes. Yeah, it's a fantastic performance, maybe not in the ways it's supposed to be, but I enjoyed it a lot. Then on the other side of that, you've got Jay Underwood as Johnny Storm / the Human Torch, who is the most erratic performance, where there are moments where he also is like, looks like, you know, he's on some sort of like antidepressant or something. He's just sort of like walking his way through the scenes. But then there are other scenes where he's just totally manic. And there's that one moment at night after the crash has happened and they have all discovered their powers, and he just freaks out, and it just so feels like the director just told him, like, just vamp, man, just go for it. And you know, bless this dude's heart, he's given the best he can give, but he's just going like, it's going, what, Reed, that's powers, and it's just, he goes, and it's like a just uninterrupted, like, minute-long sequence of him freaking the fuck out, and you get, like, it goes long enough that I started to get concerned. It's like, is he having a mental breakdown? Does this guy need, like, medical care on the set? Like, this is a lot to take in for what has otherwise been a similarly very, like, sedate performance. All of a sudden, this dude is flipping the fuck out.
Yes, absolutely. Rebecca Stabb as Susan Storm probably gives it the most, like, earnest try, but as in a lot of these adaptations, she has not been given a character to play, so she doesn't have much to do. But, you know, she does the blocking on those scenes where they just do a hard cut and now she's invisible. She does the blocking just fine.
Yes. She can stand there and then not be there and when they cut the camera, and that's, you know, unfortunately, that's the most of what they ask of Sue in a lot of this.
I just want to call out again, Joseph Culp, who plays Victor Von Doom. He is so extra. I love how much of this is totally Dr. Doom as Skeletor, as some kind of like Saturday morning cartoon villain, that the Team Rocket version of Dr. Doom, as you said, Sean. But he is in like the fucking costume. He's in the green cloak and the mask for the whole movie. He's hamming it up. He's chewing the scenery. He totally feels like he was asked to vamp in a lot of those scenes where he just comes in and like he's acting against brick fucking walls, because he's usually like monologuing against Reed as at the Alex Hyde White performance, who is just completely stone-faced, Xanaxed out of his mind. And then you'll have Dr. Doom just hamming it up, doing all these hand signals to illustrate what he's saying. And then he'll do the most extra evil laugh, which I absolutely love. The moment at the end where he's being held off the cliff and Reed has his glove and he just pulls it off and then he's falling to his apparent death, cackling with glee. You know, I enjoy this. This is a fun version of Dr. Doom, which you cannot say about the other live-action Dr. Dooms so far.
Yes, it's very true. And fun trivia, that actor Joseph Culp, if you recognize that last name, is because he's the son of Robert Culp, great TV character actor. And if you're a fan of Columbo, he's the bad guy in like all the best Columbos. He was a good friend with Columbo, and so it's, you know, he's in like 8 of those fucking Columbo episodes. And when I saw that last name, I'm like, oh my God, is he related to Robert Culp? And he is. He was his kid.
Yes, and Joseph Culp did also, you might know him as Don Draper's father in Mad Men, the like Don Draper's alcoholic dad in flashbacks. And I'm just learning this now, Sean, he has appeared in the MCU. He played Franklin D. Roosevelt in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
There you go. Maybe that was really Dr. Doom the whole time. Maybe that's what we'll find out. It's like that Robert Downey Jr., he takes off the fucking mask, and it's Franklin D. Roosevelt who takes off the mask, and it's Joseph Culp as Dr. Doom from the 1994 unreleased Fantastic Four movie, which weirdly enough does not seem like too deep a cut based on the kind of weird shit that's happened. You know, I mean, we've already had Nicolas Cage in a fucking DC, a like weird CGI recreation of Nicolas Cage as Superman in a DC movie, so that would not be too far off from
that's more obscure than this. That movie never existed. Nicolas Cage never played Superman for one frame of film. This movie at least exists. You can go see it. I would not put that past Marvel in the slightest. We'll see though. All right. What else? Okay, the funniest thing about this movie to me, this movie has a score by the brothers David and Eric Wurst, and the main theme that plays every time the Fantastic Four are in a room together bonding it's just the Jurassic Park theme.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of it. It's the build up to, everyone knows the da 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 na na da na 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 na, that whole thing. It doesn't get to that. It goes off in a different direction for that. But the build-up is almost identical to the point that I thought I was going crazy every time it started. It even does, at one point, the middle eight from the Jurassic Park theme, the bridge where it goes into the piano moment, it just steals that, too. It's, like, so blatant. And knowing that Jurassic Park came out the year they were working on this, 1993, it's just unmistakable. And the Jurassic Park theme does not really fit with the Fantastic Four. It's a very different kind of thing, and it just made me laugh over and over again, because when it wouldn't go into the big John Williams swell, I felt like I was going crazy, because it just takes that theme up to a certain point.
No, I was with you. I mean, at first I thought it was legitimately because it was like a temp track or whatever for the unfinished movie, but no, it is like, it is quote unquote composed originally for this, plagiarized maybe more,
Sean,
but
not only was it originally composed, I am reading here from Wikipedia that the composers, David and Eric Wurst, spent $6,000 of their own money to get the orchestra for this, because they wanted a bigger orchestra. So they spent what I assume was most of their paycheck getting that orchestra to play that plagiarized track.
well, there you go. Honestly, that sounds incredibly cheap for hiring an orchestra. I mean, this is 1994. Like, but you know, I could cough up $6,000 for a 48-piece orchestra. Like, that sounds like a good fucking deal.
Yeah. So that is the Fantastic Four 1994. Anything else to say about this one?
One thing that, I thought was interesting is that they do include Alicia, the Thing's girlfriend, which, yes, because I watched all these in chronological order when they were released, so I did not remember that character is also in the Tim Story movies. And so at first I was like, oh my God, like, right, Alicia Masters, like, it's not a deep cut, but it's not a character I would have expected to show up in the movie. She is mostly tied into the totally inexplicable jeweler subplot that is just very weird. And it's just like, it goes this, like, you just can tell that the movie really should just be like a 45-minute TV special. And they just have this like weird extra B plot to fluff it out to like what feels like an actual feature length for it. But I thought it was cool that they included that character. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a character I remember from the comics. Her relationship with the Thing is a very cool thing from the comics. And I was impressed that this movie bothered to include that.
Yes. So then we move on to the 2005 and 2007 movies, which I think we can talk about basically combined, because they are obviously the same cast, same crew. The second movie has a couple of, new actors in it, but for the most part, these are very, very similar. And the path to get these made is hilarious. It's one of those cases where this was in development hell forever. Basically, once Marvel bought the film, the 1994 film, bought that back so that it would never get released, they then partnered with 20th Century Fox to do a big budget adaptation, and they spent years developing that. The first person hired was Chris Columbus, the guy who did Home Alone, would eventually do the first two Harry Potter movies. They went through another couple of directors and writers. One of the screenwriters was Sam Hamm, who wrote the Batman movie in 1989. They eventually, the next person they hired to direct it was Raja Gosnell, and in a piece of movie history that I think is very funny, Raja Gosnell then left the movie to do Scooby-Doo, the 2002 film with Matthew Lillard. Well, honestly, good choice. The 2002 Scooby-Doo is a fun movie. Yeah. The next person who developed the movie, and this one actually went pretty far along, was Peyton Reed, who eventually did the Marvel movie, the Ant-Man trilogy for Marvel. So Peyton Reed later had a lot of things to do with Marvel, but this would have been an earlier attempt. And he has said later on that his version of Fantastic Four was much more what it looks like we're getting with the new MCU movie, that it would have had this kind of like 60s futurist aesthetic. He said one of his like honest like inspirations was the Beatles movie A Hard Day's Night, that kind of like 60s media pop culture sort of thing, and that it would have had more like outer space and sci-fi and stuff, and all of those sorts of elements, and that Fox did not want to make that movie, that they wanted something, smaller and narrower in scope. And eventually Tim Story came on to do the film. Different actors obviously were auditioned for all of these things. One that I think is very funny is that Mads Mikkelsen auditioned for the role of Mr. Fantastic, and I do want to see the version of Fantastic Four where Mads Mikkelsen is the hero, because he never plays heroes. Maybe he should, but it would be hard to separate that in our minds now from Hannibal or the Bond villain or whatever else.
Yes, yeah, because this would have been... Yeah, because Casino Royale was 2006. So yes, this would have been just a little bit before he was...
He got a better part, but yes. You have all of that. They did... One of the first names they considered for Doctor Doom, this is funny, was Robert Downey Jr. They were thinking about him. Robert Downey Jr. was essentially unhireable at this point because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang had not come out, so maybe that's why it didn't happen. But he is obviously playing Doctor Doom in the MCU, starting with the new Avengers movies. So there you go. And then you have, Tim Story directs this. It does say on Wikipedia that after The Incredibles came out, Story did decide to make a bunch of script changes, and he says, add more special effects to avoid similarities. I don't know what the more special effects are. This movie is extremely modest in terms of actually showing off powers or whatever, but The Incredibles was some kind of influence on this. So there you go. And then you had the sequel made 2 years later. These films were not flops by any means. The first movie was budgeted at around $100 million, and it made about $330 million, so a solid triple, definitely turned a profit. The second movie cost a little bit more and made a little bit less, but probably still turned a profit. So neither of these were bombs, but neither were they huge successes. They weren't necessarily critically ravaged, but they obviously were not particularly praised. And definitely by the time you get to 2007 and then 2008, when you have the kind of 1-2 punch of Iron Man in May and The Dark Knight in July, I think this brand of superhero movie just goes out of favor very, very quickly, and so it is understandable why this did not continue. Also, the cast split up and went and did other things, like obviously Chris Evans joined the MCU as Captain America, so he's not doing this anymore. But yeah, that is the story behind these films, and, my overall reaction to these, I do not have any pain watching these movies. I don't think they're great, but, they're easy watches. They get a lot more of the Fantastic Four than I think they are given credit for. I think the cast is pretty good to sometimes great. I think their versions of Johnny and Ben are excellent. And I think that part of the movie works very well. I think the, chemistry among the cast, other than the romantic chemistry between Ewan Gruffudd and Jessica Alba, which is non-existent, is pretty good. The tone, I think, is pretty right on the money. I like that they don't take themselves too seriously, but are still earnest. They're very good-hearted movies. There isn't a ton of cynicism in them in the way, truly terrible comic book movies have. So, I think these are fine. I think the big problem in both of these is more the story they choose to tell, the way they work in Doctor Doom, the very, very narrow scope of them. This first movie is essentially a sitcom with them all in a building together, and the second movie is, a little bit bigger, but not enough to really, make them use their powers in interesting ways. So, I think those are problems, but they're fine. They're fine.
Yeah. I feel kind of the exact same way, that they are, they're not bad movies, they're not amazing movies, but I think they're fun movies to revisit because they are of a time that has passed, And I remember seeing these in the theater. I particularly remember the first one. I think also because my dad got it for the DVD for me for Christmas as well. So I'd seen that first one at least twice. Once in the theater, once on that DVD version. And I remember having a fondness for them, even if I remember them not being great. Rise of the Silver Surfer, I remember seeing in the theater, but I had forgotten most of what happened in the movie. Because again, these movies are not about the plot. In terms of the movies did not figure out how to make the plot and the story work well. It's not like they're bad. They're not awful. It's not like Fan Four Stick that doesn't figure any shit of that out on any level at all. But it is the thing when you watch these is it is so much like a poor man's version of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Especially this first one. And that's part of the thing they do with Doctor Doom is to just make him a like poor man's version of Green Goblin from the first Spider-Man movie, down to me like keep on expecting him to like lean close to motherfucker and go back to formula, because they're just ripping off that entire character arc with like the board cutting him out of the deal and him slowly losing his mind. They don't go like full Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with it. They probably should have at a certain point, because if you're copying that character arc enough, you might as well copy it all the fucking way, but you also don't have an actor that's kind of carrying it that well. But anyways, but like the problem with these movies is that aspect of it, is that like they're copying like the form, the style, the humor, the aesthetic of those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, but what they can't copy is that sort of like that fundamental storytelling prowess that those, particularly 1 and 2, have. Obviously 3 is a bit of a different story, but especially Spider-Man 2, you look at that movie and every part of that movie is all so tailored to telling this overall narrative and theme about responsibility and sacrifice and what is it to be a hero. And every character, every line, every scene, every action is dialed in towards building up those bigger ideas. And it's, you know, it's very hard to say what either of these Fantastic Four movies are like about, or what is that central theme beyond a vague like family and we gotta overcome our differences. It's like what it's technically about, but it's not really about it in any meaningful way. And I think that's like the big shortcoming, is it just can't kind of overcome that boundary and really figure out that more fundamental storytelling piece and get to that to click together. But all the like surface level stuff is totally entertaining. I enjoy this interpretation of the main four. As you say, especially Johnny and Ben are really good versions of those characters. The interplay between the four works really well. And for me, that is enough. Like, that is enough for it to be a fun movie, especially as a fan of the Fantastic Four from the comics. I can enjoy it on that level, even if I'm sure in a couple of years from now, I will have basically forgotten everything about these movies again, other than a vague, like, man, Michael Chiklis sure was good as the Thing, and that's a cool prosthetics. Like, I will not have gained anything permanent in my life from rewatching these movies. I will have forgotten all that again at some point. But for the momentary entertainment of it, you know, sometimes that can be enough.
Yes, I mean, these movies are completely insubstantial. There is no substance to them whatsoever. There is no real attempt at theme. There's nothing really to hold on to and remember. And, you know, especially in the 2005 one, the first one, there's not even any real, like, action or spectacle to speak of. Most of the first movie, the 2005 one, is the Fantastic Four hanging out in the Baxter Building doing kind of sitcom antics. But the thing is, if there's any superhero group you can do that with, it is the Fantastic Four. Like, you can, if you're going to have a movie where the only thing that works is kind of the four main characters hanging out and bouncing off one another, well, this is the crew you can do that with. And, like, it is kind of low-key charming. It's, you know, it's not a movie I'm going to tell people to run out that you have to see. You have not missed anything in life if you haven't seen this.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself watching it for, you know, it only is 100 minutes long, it is completely painless. You know, there are things I wish it did better, but it's kind of fun. It's fine. It's charming. And if the movie you are chasing is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, well, you know what? At least you are pointed in the right direction. That's the main thing for me. And I enjoy this for what it is. Yeah, I mean, getting into the characters, it really is like, I think, let's talk about Johnny and Ben in particular, because they're the ones that work so well. And this was like Chris Evans' big breakthrough. And I think it is so funny to me that Chris Evans is now known, I think, as like the squeaky clean Captain America actor, because this is the kind of character he played before Captain America was dirtbags, right? And Johnny Storm in this one is, like, he's not a bad guy, but he's a jerk. He's a young, you know, asshole. He's always making fun of Ben, and he's always, you know, kind of pimping out the team for various sponsorships and shit. But, like, Chris Evans is really good at that shit-eating grin thing. I really enjoyed, actually, the only time he's done this in recent years is Knives Out, the Rian Johnson movie. And I thought Rian Johnson was very savvy to cast him in that part, knowing that he could do the asshole thing, but people now associate him with Captain America, because I kind of miss this flavor of Chris Evans, and I think he's very entertaining here.
Yeah, he's like very charismatic, you know, and yes, it carries that sort of that loose energy that Johnny should have, and also that kind of like ambition that the character has that is, you know, his greatest strength and his greatest weakness kind of thing. And I think like he really pulls that all together, and he really sells that kind of the cocky jerk thing that is just always on the line, which for me is what Johnny Storm should be. Is always on that line where, like, you're not sure, is he just really a dick, or is he a dick with a heart of gold? Like, is that heart of gold there? Because sometimes he comes across as mean, other times it comes across as playful, and he's always wavering right there. And I think that's where Johnny Storm should be as a character. He should sometimes feel irritating and sometimes feel like you can't help but love him. And I think that he just, like, kind of maintains that really well through both of the movies. And I think that's, like, a tough thing to do. You know, it's a very sort of, like, marginal or not marginal, like, liminal position for the performance to exist in. And I think he always kind of, like, nails that. And I suspect it's probably one of the reasons why they gave him, like, the more notable character arc in Rise of the Silver Surfer. They, you know, like, if there's any one character they kind of lift up in that second one, it's really Johnny Storm, and they give him, like, the power swapping thing. And I suspect it's just, like, you know, the 2005 movie does a lot with The Thing, because The Thing is the easiest character to do the drama with, because he's got a lot of the Frankenstein's monster drama kind of built into the character. But the other most colorful character, the most colorful performance is Evans as Johnny, and so it feels like they kind of saw that and then we're like, let's give him bigger material for Rise of the Silver Surfer to just, like, get more of that character out there and more of that kind of interesting performance on the screen.
And I do think he's particularly good in that second movie where he has those bigger things to play. Like, I actually do really like that big, like, climax at the end of the second one where he has to fight Doom, combining all of their powers. Like, that's a fun sequence. And Chris Evans, like, you see the energy there that you would see in, like, Avengers Endgame when he's on the battlefield against Thanos and says Avengers Assemble, right? Like, the leadership qualities. Like, it is just very clear watching these. Chris Evans was going to be a big thing with or without these movies. And I think the fact that, obviously, all the Marvel producers saw him on this. They worked on this movie. Kevin Feige and Avi Arad were around for this stuff, even if this wasn't their movie. And the fact that they thought of him for Captain America, it does not surprise me. It's a different kind of part than this, but, like, also a tremendously difficult character to play, I think, in particularly the modern era. And, you know, if you've only seen him as Captain America, that is, I think, a reason to go back and watch these, because it is a really fun alternate version of that star persona.
Yeah, and it is, like, very funny when you look back on it that there's not, like, a big gap between those, right? Like, what Captain America was
2011.
2011. So Captain America was 2011. So it was only 4 years between him doing Johnny Storm and him being Captain America. Whereas in my mind, and obviously partially that is because that is, like, those 4 years were our 4 years in high school.
Yes.
But it's like I feel like there's such a huge gap, partially because it's, like, just superhero movies were so different so quickly, that it is funny looking back and be like, it's not like, oh, it's little baby Chris Evans. It's like, no, that's just Chris Evans. Like, he's you know, he's looks the same. It's not that much time has passed between this and him being Captain America.
Yeah, although he is not insane ripped yet the way he would be when he gets the super soldier serum in Captain America. Well, I guess it's him the whole movie. It's just they CGI'd his head onto a little body for the beginning of that movie to make him look scrawny. He didn't actually do the, like, Robert De Niro thing of lose all the weight in between halves of Captain America, although that would have been very funny.
Yeah. It is nice, like, you know, you brought up the point, like, it is kind of fun to watch a superhero movie where, like, because he is very in shape, like, he's, like, obviously worked out a lot, like, he looks really good, but he looks like a human being. You know, it's like watching Hugh Jackman in the old X-Men movies, where, like, now this is like a level of fitness that is, like, you know, very, you know, like, hard to achieve, but is, like, achievable for, like, a regular person to potentially do if you are really committed to it. It's not like watching any superhero movie now and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's like everyone has to be, you know, a bodybuilder basically, and on various kinds of, you know, let's say less than legal substances in order to attain this physique. It's fun to watch a movie where, like, oh, it's like, yeah, he's you know, obviously very fit and he's got lots of muscle and stuff, but that looks like a guy. That's nice.
Right. No, absolutely, that's true. And yeah, we also have the whole X Games thing going on in this one, where, like, he goes and does the big flame on scene at the X Games, and you've got all the, like, very early 2000s music. The scene where he discovers his powers is he's snowboarding with the, like, female nurse, and he's like, and they're doing the, like just absolute noise, early 2000s rock that's terrible. And I laughed very hard at all of that because it is so dated, but in a very charming way.
Yeah, if you've lived through the 2005 and you're like or like a conscious being in the early 2000s, if you're old enough for that, this movie is definitely like a blast from the past, where like you just get that like old Xbox and Mountain Dew logos and shit, and you just get you get the X Games, you get every single needle drop is the most like, oh fuck, I remember that song from like the middle school graduation.
Yes.
It's just like, oh man, it has, maybe aged like fine wine is not the expression to use, but it has aged in a way that gives it a certain vintage and a certain flavor that you just don't get anymore.
Indeed. I don't think we're going to be getting that in the new MCU movie. So there you go. That's Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, and then Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm is just fantastic. He's so good. It's such a like full-throated version of the character. He gets the big arc in the first movie where he gets it reversed and then decides to be the Thing again. He gets to have the girlfriend Alicia Masters, played by Kerry Washington, in these movies. She's a very young, new Kerry Washington at the time, but she's very good. And you get all of that. And then, honestly, that prosthetic that they have him in, the puppetry of it, is fantastic. It looks great. It is Michael Chiklis in the suit, and they've built it in such a way that his eyes are still there and fully expressive. Honestly, I look at this and I'm disappointed that the Thing is CGI in the new movie, because this is so well done. There's no reason you couldn't. I mean, maybe if you want him to do, particularly insane action stuff, you need him to be CGI, but this is just a very good use of prosthetics.
Yeah, it's a fantastic use of prosthetics for a fantastic performance. I mean, this is the most that is the character just walked off the comic page onto the silver screen you get. It's so, and I remembered the performance being really good. I mean, it's the main thing I remember about these movies is how good the Thing was, but it is really cool revisiting and be fucking yeah, he looks like the same Thing, he walks like the Thing, he talks like the Thing, the voice is perfect. It's just such a fully embodied performance, obviously supported by that fantastic prosthetics. And it is a thing that it feels like that. I feel like ideally the Thing should be a character that is a mix of both practical prosthetics and CG visual effects. Because I think for the scenes of them just lounging around together, you can just use the prosthetics. You don't need to have a full CG golem there for the Thing. Yeah. You're building on top of something. You're not taking anything away. So it's the thing that prosthetics can do. And then you can do obviously CG modifications or replacements for things that the prosthetic would not work with. But I feel like that kind of what the really good modern Star Wars productions like Mandalorian have done with that kind of mix of CG, puppetry, prosthetics, all that kind of stuff blending together into a single character like Grogu on Mandalorian. That is what a modern day Thing I feel should be. And because just this movie proves how effective that the physical prosthetics are, that the physicality of the performance and what he can do with the other members of the team, especially with Johnny, because the Thing and Johnny have that very fun, kind of brotherly, combative relationship. I just feel like having an actual person there in the costume, in all of that stuff, really just kind of elevates those moments and makes them feel very real. Just little things like Johnny, in the montage, putting the cream on his hand and trying to tickle him, but it's not working because you need something a little less subtle to trigger his reflex. Then eventually the Thing smacks his own face with all the cream and Johnny runs away. Those little kinds of very simple physical interactions just sell so well because it is just an actual person there in a performance, and it's so good. And I love that you mentioned the eyes, because I think that's the most important thing, because that is a little detail from the comics is he and other people refer to as his beautiful blues. He has his blue eyes, and it's kind of, for me, it's always a metaphor for the whole character, or synecdoche for the whole character is the eyes, because it is the Thing is on the outside, he's this big rocky monster who's tough as his nails and can punch through walls and do all that shit. But he's the most emotionally vulnerable member of the entire team. And it's the eyes are the windows to the soul. That you should be able to see that in his eyes, the beautiful blue eyes of the Thing. And it's just that's the thing that Michael Chiklis does so well, is you can see the humanity, you can see the hurt that this character carries with him. From not being able to be a normal person, not being able to sit in a chair like a normal person, not being able to pick up a glass like a normal person, right? Like all these things he has to accommodate in his life now that all the other members of the team don't have to deal with, and his struggles with that, which is obviously like that's the heart of that 2005 movie, and it's the thing that the 2005 movie is really good at doing because it's committed to doing it and because Chiklis is committed to doing it, and it is the thing that movie is most excellent at. It's just a shame that like that is not what the movie needs to be able to do more than just those things. Like if it was just that was the movie, it wasn't a Fantastic Four movie, it was the thing, the movie, like I think it could have potentially been like a great movie, but that's not what the assignment is, right? It's like you have to you need to give something like that for every member of the team and have all that synergized together, and that's the thing that movie isn't even close to figuring out. But that one part of it is like as good as I can kind of imagine that character being done.
Oh, totally. And like, what cool casting to do Michael Chiklis. Like, it's so out of the box, but so perfect. I mean, this would have been midway through his run on The Shield, so where he was obviously very, very acclaimed. But also, if you look at The Shield, where he is like a bad cop roughing people up, you would not think of him, I think, for this part automatically. I think it's cool that they went kind of outside the box for someone who's more in kind of a character actory space, but has the energy required to be a lead, right? Yeah. And he's able to do that. And yeah, just obviously everyone loves Michael Chiklis. He's a great actor. He's very good in this. I love the way he modulates the performance between his human side and then when he is in the suit as the Thing. The way like he kind of plays with the voice, his comic timing in this is really good. Yeah. He and Chris Evans just have great chemistry, even when they are at each other's throats. It's very fun to watch. And so all of that it works really, really well. And another thing I want to praise this movie for, I genuinely think the first act of Fantastic Four 2005 is very impressive in how economic it is with everything. In the same way like Spider-Man 2002 is impressive in that way, where it just gets through this stuff very quickly and light on its feet, and it introduces characters and character relationships very fast. Like, I don't love how they have to tie in the Doctor Doom of it all, and some of that stuff is stupid, but we meet the four, we see what their relationships are, we get a sense of who all of them are individually and as a group, they go into space, they get hit by the rays, they come back, 15 minutes. That's impressive. Like, that is something that a lot of superhero movies really struggle to get right, and this one kind of nails that, and it is the only of the three origin stories we're talking about today where Ben Grimm is a character before he turns into the Thing. Because, like, Ben is barely in the 2015 movie. His relationship to Reed in the 1994 movie is extremely nebulous, like what he is, and in this one it's just, hey, they're buddies. Ben works for the Air Force, I think it is, but he works for the military, and so you understand why he would kind of have the physique he has and all of that, why he's going into space with them, and just like that side of it, I think it matters that I understand that Reed and Ben are friends, because if Reed and Ben aren't really good friends who I see a closeness to, I would expect Ben to snap Reed in half for what happens to him, right? Like, there has to be the requisite amount of friendship to give the requisite amount of grace, whereas in, like, the 2015 movie, what Reed does is so evil and awful to Ben that Ben should snap that little fucker in half. But, like, I think the 2005 movie kind of threads that needle perfectly in a weird way.
Yeah, because you can feel that he has, through that friendship, he has a lot of faith in Reed that slowly gets eroded over the course of the movie, which is what then near the end Doctor Doom uses as this kind of wedge to try to drive the team apart, and then they all come back together. But like kind of nailing that initial relationship. And as I say, like it does that really well for all of them. That all of those main four, you get the sense of like, what is the dynamic between these four characters as who they are before they become superheroes, and it doesn't have to spend like 45 minutes or whatever fucking doing that and not even being able to doing it well like Fan Four Stick. Which spends way more time and doesn't get any of the relationships across.
Fan Four Stick is so fucked up that we don't even meet Johnny Storm, who is the fourth member to be introduced, for 22 minutes.
Yeah.
By the 22-minute mark of the 2005 movie, they've got their powers and are playing around with them. We haven't even met all four in Fan Four Stick, and they're the same length as movies. They're both 100 minutes long. It's insane.
Yeah, it is to the shame of Fan Four Stick. It is to the credit of the 2005 movie. That is like, that's a hard scripting problem like that, because that's a lot to kind of set up and do and pull off in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it may sound like damning with faint praise, but like there are much better superhero movies that actually stumble with their opening worse than this movie does, I think.
Absolutely.
Like, it is a tough thing to get right. So all credit to the movie for that. So then you've got a man whose name I'm never entirely sure how to say, but I'm going to say Ewan Gruffudd. Is that right? Do you think?
I'm not Welsh. I can't say.
Okay.
Ewan Gruffudd, something like that.
Yeah. This guy as Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, and he is fine. I've seen this actor in other places. He's always like very amiable, very charming, not necessarily the most impressive person in the room. I think he tends to work better in kind of a character actor on the side role. I don't think he has kind of the requisite leading man energy that this movie quite needs, but I do like him. Like, I don't have any like antipathy. I do find him perfectly charming.
Yes, yeah, that's how I feel. That it's like he does enough, like more than enough to get the character across, while never quite like kind of excelling at it. But it's like it's a decent performance that gets like it feels like he totally gets the character and the character comes across well. It just doesn't go that extra mile to be like Chris Evans or Michael Chiklis, where you just have this like, oh man, they so embodied the character and so fully expressed the character. It just never quite gets to that level. But to be fair, also like Reed Richards is a much harder character to do in that way in many respects, because he doesn't have as big of a like dramatic hinge on him, right? Like Johnny and Ben are the most dramatic characters because Ben has his whole Frankenstein's monster complex, and then Johnny is the youngest and has his kind of hot-headedness that gives you this very kind of juicy thing to tackle, both I think as a writer and as an actor. Whereas like Reed Richards, it's like, I think that character, his stuff is much more subtle. And I do think this is one of the hard things to do with Fantastic Four as a movie, is like Fantastic Four is very, very particularly well suited for TV / comic books, right? For the serialized stuff, I think Reed Richards works really well as a character over long form story, where his foibles, his inability to sort of like see the little details because he's so fixated on the big picture, like that's his big thing. And I think that's like a hard thing always to do in one movie with everything else going on. And I think like it just never, the Reed Richardsness of that component of it never fully comes across in either of these movies. But I don't even necessarily think that's an actor thing. I think that like, I just think that the movies never kind of like nail or get around from a conceptual point the fuller extent of what Reed Richards is as a character.
Yeah, I think if the script was able to find more of those notes that you're talking about there, Sean, the fact that Ewan Gruffudd plays this kind of as sort of a nice, mellow, milquetoast guy who's not great at articulating himself would be fine. Like, I don't think that is a wrong characterization or unworkable, especially if you have, like, Chris Evans over here carrying the movie star energy. You don't necessarily need Mr. Fantastic to be that bold. But I do think, yeah, that the script is not, and that's where it's the same with Sue Storm. Like the Reed-Sue relationship, that whole half of the movies is, I think, where the team stuff falls down the most, because I don't think Gruffudd and Jessica Alba have great chemistry, and I don't think either of those characters are fully articulated in the way the other two are. They're fine, and I actually enjoy watching those two actors interact with the other members of the cast a lot. I do just think, like, in terms of the romance stuff, sparks do not exactly fly.
No, yes, I would definitely agree with that. Which leads us to Sue, who is like the most, I think, difficult character to do well in Fantastic Four, because the Fantastic Four didn't figure it out for a very long time in terms of the comics, because she is, I mean, this is the thing that if you go back and read the old school stuff, the Jack Kirby, Stan Lee books, you will find that, all of them have their kind of characterizations and their weaknesses and stuff like that. Ben Grimm's weakness is his emotional vulnerability and his Frankenstein monster complex. Johnny Storm is his hot-headedness. Reed Richards is his inability to see the small details. And Sue Storm's weakness is that she's a woman. And that's as far as they went in the old ones. Like, if you want to see some sexist storytelling, that's what those old comic books very much feel like. And obviously that character has evolved a lot over the course of the comics, and they bring a lot of that evolution into this movie of making her a scientist as well. Like, she was not originally, like, she was there because she was his girlfriend. That's it. Like, that's why she was on the mission. And And so they really, I do like that they make her reads like equal, and equal and opposite in many ways. Like his intellectual equal, but she's like on the different side of things, right? She's more on like the biology, and that's like where her science stuff is. And he's like all the mechanical physics kind of stuff. And so I think the conceptualization there is all good. And I do think Jessica Alba is doing a good job, but also the movie is distracted by the fact that the reason why they cast Jessica Alba, which is not anything for her acting ability, they cast her because she's hot. She's doing a great job, but the reason the movie is using her is because she is hot. And it is like one of those things watching this movie, you're like, this is one of the things that feels very mid-2000s about the movie is yes. X Games, the needle drops, the Xbox logos, and how they use Jessica Alba. And it's honestly was my biggest surprise revisiting the movie because I feel like her performance has kind of been trashed over the years. It's like her performance is good. Like she's doing a really good job in these movies. It's that the movie just wants her to strip down into her underwear for your big, cheesecake moment at the midpoint of the film. And it just feels kind of painful watching it for that.
Oh, the worst part of this movie is when they're on the bridge and she needs to strip down to become invisible so they can get around the police barrier, maybe? But then they get around it and you realize you could have cut that whole scene because it's not plot relevant because the actual them getting around is not a challenge. And also, like, the Invisible Woman has all these other powers that are cool. Like, in the climax, she gets really cool stuff to do with, like, the barrier and all that. And it's like, you can have her do other stuff. Like, it's so clearly that scene is only there to get Jessica Alba in her underwear.
Yes.
And that is crass also, and gross.
Like, one of the things about it is, like, that was a fascinating scene to revisit, for me, partially because, not to be gross, but this movie came out when I was a 13-year-old boy. So I remember that moment very distinctly. It was an important moment in my development in a certain way, right? But it was like interesting revisiting the scene as an adult when I haven't seen the movie for fucking 20 years or something. And being like, oh, there's just no justification for it. Even though it would be easy to do a justification. It's not like it's hard to come up with a reason for that to happen. But it is like, we got to get past the barriers. And then like, they just get past the barriers anyway and she's stripped down for no reason. The other thing that like, watching about it is interesting is just the realization of, well, I mean, there's no reason to have her strip her clothes anyways, any more than, like, why does Mr. Fantastic, why is he able to use his powers while wearing normal clothes? And that's not a problem for him. Like, his clothes aren't stretchy. If he tries to stretch, his clothes should rip to fucking pieces. And yet he stretches in that scene, and apparently it's just not an issue. And it's like, there's something about it of, like, seeing it again as an adult and being like, it's so blatant. And it makes the scene like really just sort of suck. And it would be like some of those things would be very easy to fix. I mean, at the very minimum, you could just do your equal opportunity thing and say like, well, also Reed has to fucking rip his shirt off to stretch and save the fireman. And then the fireman comes up and Jessica Alba walks up or Sue walks up and she looks at him and goes like, you've been working out too. And you have your little, girl power joke. Like, I don't think, not saying that I think that would be great, but you could do the bare minimum and at least like have an excuse for it. And the movie's not even interested in going that far. It's like, no, we got to have her stripped down to her underwear and have your like invisible girl wearing the underwear scene. And we're not going to think about the fact that you could just say that her clothes become invisible too, and it's fine. Or you could say that Mr. Fantastic also has to take off his clothes or whatever. But there's just a clear reason why they're doing it, and it has nothing to do with anything of the story of the characters in the movie.
Yeah, I agree. And this is such a time capsule to this era, because it's, not like Hollywood has figured out its issues with women. I don't want to imply that. But I do think if you watch, like, blockbuster Hollywood stuff from the 90s and the 2000s,
yes,
that is such a dark era for how women are sexualized on screen and how actresses are used. And I do think Jessica Alba is part of this generation of actresses who they have much weaker careers than they should have had. Like, yes, because they were so pigeonholed for this. And I do think, like, so Jessica Alba was born in 1981. I think if she were born, like, 10, 11 years later, if she was our age, she would have had I think, a better career than she wound up having, because I think she would have been starting to be in big movies a little bit later when Hollywood wasn't as obsessed with this thing, right? Where, like, this wasn't the way women were exclusively used in movies. And I think there would have been, because you look at the list of, like, movies she's in, and there's scenes like this in so many of them. And it is, so gross in so many ways, and it is too bad. Because you're right, she is totally fine in these movies. She's often very good. I do think she is stranded a little bit in the second one, because they give her the worst contacts I have ever seen in a movie. They give her these giant blue eye contacts in the second movie. And maybe that's more comics accurate. I don't know. I also don't care about the eye color of my fucking comic book characters. But it does kind of kill her performance, like, because it makes her eyes hard to see. It looks like she has, like, glass eyeballs that don't quite emote, because the contacts just so obscure her iris and everything, and they, like, draw your attention there in a way that really, like, obscures what the humanity, like, the eyes are just so important for any actor, and it's, like, actively distracting throughout that whole second movie. But that is not her fault. She's fine, and she actually gets some good scenes in that second movie, like opposite the Silver Surfer and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely, and it's not like the movies are uniformly doing bad by her. She gets good scenes as well. It's just, you see that stuff, like, on the bridge, and you're just rolling your eyes like, God, this is dumb.
It just undercuts the character in the actress so much, like that. And I think it's why, like, I do think, like, the prevailing memory of it is just, like, it was a really bad performance and a bad casting choice and all this stuff. And I'm, like, watching the movie being like, no, that's not what it is. It's just the only thing that people remember is this shit. It's it's like Megan Fox, and, like, there's so many actresses like that have, like, the same thing happen. It's like, no, like, they're doing a good job. It's just the movie is using her visually as just a sex object, and so that's, like, the only thing that a lot of viewers are going to latch onto, and then it just and then it gets attached to the person in this really gross way. And that was, like, a thing that I had not thought about with these movies in a very long time until rewatching it, being like, oh, yep, no, this is another one. This is another actress. This is another character. This is another performance that is in the long line of things like that happened in this era of films.
Yeah. And then we have the actual, like, wrench in the machine of these movies that I think is the most obvious problem, which is Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Where you have this actor, Julian McMahon, who I just think is bad in these movies on the most basic level. Like, he does not have charisma. He is not good opposite the other actors. It is a bad, uninteresting performance. But it is also such a dumb version of Doctor Doom, where, like, none of the stuff that makes the character cool is even remotely in here. And the couple of times they, like, mention the word Latveria on a screen in the background that you can see if you're looking really closely, just feels like it's taunting you. Like, actual Doctor Doom, he's not here. He is not here.
Yeah, like, the whole weird thing of, oh, he's a big capitalist business magnate, and again, like, all it is they're just doing Willem Dafoe from Spider-Man. It's bored, and it's all this shit, and it's back to formula, and it's all that. And it's like, that's just not Doctor Doom. Like, that's so beneath Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom doesn't give a fuck about corporations or any of that. Like, and it's just, like, it's so far away from the character from the comics that you would know and love, or from other interpretations of Doctor Doom in the cartoons or in video games and stuff. And so on that level, it's just, like, hugely disappointing. But also the thing that they have replaced a good Doctor Doom with, if you just look at it as, like, an original character or something, is super boring and just super generic. It has none of the manic energy and charisma and madness of Willem Dafoe in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It doesn't have, like, there's nothing to hang it on, there's just this sort of very vacuous performance at that antagonist role in this movie that I think the actor's not doing a great job. I think the script is not doing a good job. I think the structure of the movie just puts him into this very nebulous position, like we talked about with the unfinished or unreleased Fantastic Four, that puts Doctor Doom turning to villain at the beginning, so he gets to be feeling properly antagonistic for the whole film. Here it is that problem of, like, he is only Doctor Doom, quote unquote, for the last, like, 15, 20 minutes of the movie. It takes so long for that transformation to really occur that it's like, by the time it's occurred, you're like, there's no you haven't developed the antagonist in a way that makes him feel like an actual antagonist. Like, he feels like he's like, you know, a B-rate antagonist from like a rom-com movie that is jealous of Reed and Sue's relationship. You never got to the part of him feeling like a supervillain in this movie.
Right. Like, putting aside, you know, is this an interesting take on Doctor Doom, and just going, is this a good villain for the movie? The biggest single problem with this Fantastic Four is that the villain does not emerge until the third act. And so you have this first act where they become the characters, that's fine. Then you have this big, long, meandering second act that is mostly just kind of a sitcom. Like they're hanging out at the Baxter Building, you know, Johnny is pranking Ben, Johnny's going out and doing Human Torch stuff at the X Games, Ben is like, you know, trying to figure out his new life, Reed and Sue are falling in love, all of that stuff. But, like, it's a second act where all of that is happening with no antagonism. It's just, like, they're, like, becoming the Fantastic Four for what? Like, the moment where they come out as the team is this scene where they're on a bridge where they stop a traffic collision they themselves started. It's like, it's such a weird version of that, because, like, the version of that in, like, Spider-Man would be like where the Green Goblin comes out at the midpoint of the movie at the big festival and Spidey stops him, right? But you don't have that because Doctor Doom doesn't... The moment where Doctor Doom comes out as Doctor Doom is also the scene where they stop Doctor Doom. It's like one long climax scene, but it is the same scene. So you have a clear beginning, you have a clear end. I'm not saying it's a great end, but you have a clear end point. But then you have this big muddle of a middle of the movie, and that is where the movie just feels very loose in a way that, again, with this team doesn't become the worst thing in the world, because I enjoy watching them all bounce off each other, but it would undeniably be better if they were bouncing off each other and then they turned around and went, now what do we do about this Doctor Doom situation, right? Like, you need that in there somewhere so there is more of a deadline to things instead of just eventually the third act will kick in and Doctor Doom will show up. And that's it.
Yeah, and I also think that that's one of those things missing for the Reed character is that, well, I guess in this conceptualization, their relationship is very, like, they hate each other. But like, classically, it should feel like this thing where Reed is kind of torn by this remembered friendship he had with this guy from college that was really important to him and really foundational for his development as a scientist, and then this megalomaniacal figure in front of him, Doctor Doom, and it's like, how do I deal with that? Like, how do I sort of resolve this relationship? And that dynamic is just very missing, and I think it's one of the things that kind of leaves Mr. Fantastic feeling a little kind of underused here, is that one of the really important relationships in the movie should be Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Doom, and it's just not there. It's not there in any of these movies.
Because Doctor Doom is just a fucking asshole to him who wants to steal his girlfriend. Like, it's weird, right?
Yes.
And so you just don't have anything to hang your hat on there. So, you know, and that's the 2005 movie. I think the ending, like, is fine. You know, I enjoy that we have a climax where they have to all use their powers to, you know, freeze Doctor Doom. That's fine. And, you know, I said when I was writing about this movie on Letterboxd, and I do think this is true, there's nothing this movie does wrong that I haven't seen Marvel specifically do worse in recent years. Mm-hmm. Like, if the special effects are a little awkward at times, and actually mostly the special effects in this movie are fine, but like some of the stretchy stuff, they hold up pretty well. But like, there have been much worse special effects in recent movies, like that Ant-Man 3, the Quantumania one. The second act is kind of an underdeveloped muddle, but you know what? I've seen a lot of Marvel movies recently that don't even have second acts, like Thunderbolt. So, you know, I'll take a second act over not having one. You know, you've got kind of a limp shrug of a villain. Sean, oh, you didn't see Black Widow. No. Okay, tell me who the villain was in Captain Marvel.
It was the Kree guy. I don't remember the name of the Kree guy, but it's the Kree guy who was her teacher. I mean, I only know that because I know the comic books.
Okay, really but you get my point, right?
Yes.
Like, there are nothing villains everywhere in this genre. You know, is there lack of chemistry between Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic here? Sure, but now Marvel doesn't even do romantic love interests in movies, so honestly, I will take the bad romance over sexless Ken dolls if you force me to choose. So, and then I do think this movie, we talked about all the things it does well. I think the score is really good. It's John Ottman who did the X-Men movies as well. It's a nice score. It was shot on film, so it has real colors. This is not ungraded digital sludge. This movie looks For the time, I would say it looked totally average. Today, it looks better than like any Marvel movie of the last 10 years. So, take that for what you will. This movie's fine.
Exactly. Yes, it is totally fine. And if you like the Fantastic Four from the comic, like if you've read Fantastic Four comic books or you've seen some of the older cartoons and you like those characters, I think you should watch the movie because it's, as a Fantastic Four fan, it's really fun. If I'm just putting on my Fantastic Four fan brain, I'm like, yeah, this is a good time. Like, is it like an incredible movie? No, but it serves that sort of element. And there's lots of comic book movies, and there are other Fantastic Four movies that are worse because you're a fan of the material, not better because you're a fan of the material. And I would rather it be better because I like these characters than for me to be mad because I like these characters.
Yes.
And I saw this movie.
And then you have Rise of the Silver Surfer, and I think it is fine plus. It's like fine
Yes.
with a little bit more spice on it because it does just get down to business. They are already the Fantastic Four. It has a clear, like, antagonistic presence that carries throughout the movie. There is some kind of threat. It gets to have a little bit more spectacle and action and some of that fun stuff. I don't think the characterization is necessarily any better, but I also don't think it's worse. Although, okay, one thing I do think is worse, I don't like that the first act of this movie has a lot of Reed just fucking lying to Sue about what they're doing around their wedding. It's too much of like, he's an absent-minded genius, so we can forgive him for being a dirtbag. Like, dude, lying to your wife is lying to your wife. I really don't care why you're doing it. You're just being a dirtbag, and I don't really love that stuff. But, I like the other stuff. The Silver Surfer looks really cool. Those are genuinely great special effects. You've got Doug Jones, the sort of puppeteer actor who's done lots of stuff like this, as the physical version of the character, and Lawrence Fishburne as the voice. I enjoy the Silver Surfer. He's cool. You got Andre Braugher in there as the military general guy. It's fine. It's fun.
Yeah, like on that Reed Richards point, I do think this is one of those places where like they do hit on like what I do think is an important part of his characterization is that does feel like the thing that Reed Richards would do, like as part of his flaw, right? That he's so focused on that big picture thing that the little things like this little white lie he feels is not a big deal. It's like not important. It's more important is me doing this bigger thing, and he misses the ways in which that those things can accumulate and are a big deal, and they do hurt people and things like that. And the problem is that the movie never gets around to doing the second part of that story. That just gets lost in the middle, right? And it's the same problem that first movie has for everything other than Ben. This movie has for everybody other than Human Torch, where it's like, it's suggestive of character arcs for all four of them, but it doesn't actually give all four of them character arcs that come together. It gives Johnny a really clear character arc, and Johnny works really well in the second movie. But it's the thing that ever keeps these from being beyond fine movies is that it just can't. It's not adept enough to juggle all those different things the way that like really great superhero movies are able to juggle character arcs for all the major characters in the film. None of these really do that. But yeah, I do enjoy the Silver Surfer stuff. I think the look of the Silver Surfer is awesome. The way they do the powers for him look fucking cool. I really like the early scene of Johnny Storm chasing him through the sky, and the Silver Surfer phases through the building and all that kind of shit. And Silver Surfer just fucking gets a chokehold on him and drags him up into space. A lot of that stuff it gets that kind of like what you're saying, the spectacle that the first movie didn't. The Fantastic Car is in it, and I like a Fantastic Car in a Fantastic Four movie. It should be there. I was heartened when the trailers for the new one it's in the trailers for the new one. I'm like, great, a Fantastic Car. It should be there. I want a Fantastic Car for my Fantastic Four. So it does get to it just gets to have more Fantastic Four-ness to it by virtue of it just being the Fantastic Four for the whole movie. And that's very fun. It is disappointing coming back to it again, and obviously already knew this because I've seen the movie before, but the way they deal with Galactus, there's like some of the aesthetic I kind of like of the giant, like there is one really cool shot of like the giant cloud of Galactus that is like dwarfs the Earth and the Earth looks tiny next to it that I think is a cool shot. But I do think the movie, kind of like the previous one, like lacks something by not having a properly characterized antagonist,
Yes.
It leans on Doctor Doom again, who's like even less interesting, I think, in the second movie. It sure is a shame to watch a Fantastic Four movie where Doctor Doom gets the Silver Surfer's board, and you're like, well, it's like that should be the most like, oh fuck. It's the villain version of Captain America lifting fucking Mjolnir in Endgame. It's like the
Right.
fuck. Oh my god. Obviously this is a thing that has happened in the comics, that Doctor Doom gets the Silver Surfer's board and power and access to power cosmic. You're like, shit, what's gonna happen to reality now? We're fucked. And instead it's, because it's this version of Doctor Doom, it's just not a particularly notable event. But I do think like not having Galactus, whether you want him to be a giant dude in purple leotard or whatever, but not having him be characterized in some way and sell the concept of not just that this is a destructive entity, but this is a god, like a literal god that exists beyond the kin of mankind, that like you cannot measure him on good and evil, but he has a will, he has an intellect that dwarfs the intellect of any human being. Like not being able to have Reed Richards sort of confront that fact and things like that, it misses out on so much potential, which if you have read those comics around, I think it's Fantastic Four number 50 and the few around that one, that's the original Galactus arc, like those are some of the all-time great classic Marvel comics from the 1960s, and it just doesn't get the vibes of that across, because I think Galactus, having him be so abstracted here, just doesn't give the movie enough to work with. And I think that's, for me, like one of the big weaknesses in the last act, is that you just don't have enough momentum because the antagonist is not characterized enough, which is the exact problem that the previous film had.
You were dead on. It's Fantastic Four number 48 where he first appears in March 1966. But yes, no, I completely agree. And I don't come from a comics background here knowing Galactus. I just know that, like, because the structure of this movie is not a necessarily unusual structure for a superhero movie, where you have kind of your initial villain who gives way to the bigger bad, right? Which is what they're doing. And that's totally fine. And I think the Silver Surfer half of it, I don't know if I would go so far as to say they, like, nailed it, but it's a good version of Silver Surfer. He looks cool, he sounds cool, all of that. So he's got a relationship with, like, Sue, so he gets to connect with part of the team. That stuff works fine. But it does feel like then that next leap where Galactus is the real threat, I don't care that Galactus is a cloud. I care that he's only a cloud, right? It's exactly. Like, I need something that, as you say, they can talk to, that when Silver Surfer goes and sacrifices himself, it feels meaningful. Like, I understand the mechanics of it. I understand the emotions of it. I feel like there's a betrayal going on there between the two of them, but you just don't get any of that. And that is where the third act just feels kind of unfinished in this one. It does seem like the new movie, the First Steps movie that Marvel is making, is basically doing the Galactus arc again. We know they're doing the female version of Silver Surfer, the Shala Ball version, and she's played by Julia Garner. But then Ralph Ineson is playing Galactus in the, like, purple, blue armor, all of that stuff. So, and I'm looking on the Wikipedia, and it even says that the director of the movie said it was important that someone embody the part, which feels like a very clear shot at Rise of the Silver Surfer. So I'm looking forward to that, because this is an iconic Fantastic Four story for a reason, and it feels like a right story to tell. It does feel like, again, I think this is a better movie than the 2005 movie. It still feels like too low in its ambitions to be a fully articulated Fantastic Four.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. That it's like, it's a better movie, but it's not like leaping up a tier or something. No. It's just like, it has all the strengths and all the flaws of the previous film. It just doesn't have as much shoe leather to chew through to do the plot that it's doing, and that's all.
Yeah, if I still gave movies letter grades the way I used to review them, I would say this one's a C+, and the 2005 is a C, or maybe this is a B-, and 2005 was a C+, something like that. Like, one half a letter grade apart.
Mm-hmm, yeah, like, it's a little marginal step up, but it's not a particularly different movie than the previous movie.
But it does look like Lawrence of Arabia next to the next movie we're going to talk about. Is that fair?
Yeah, is it time finally, Jonathan, to discuss Fant4 Stick? which I was heartened. My favorite thing about this movie is that if you type Fantastic into Wikipedia, it does just take you here.
It does know,
which
yes.
I'm like, okay, good. Somebody at Wikipedia gets it, and I'm glad, because that's what should happen. It's the only good thing about this movie is the dumb title they gave it, because this movie is, as far as I'm concerned, not called Fantastic Four. It is only called Fantastic.
I completely agree. And Fantastic, as I said before, and I will go to my grave saying this probably, unless something worse comes out, I think this is the worst superhero movie. I think, because there is no other superhero movie I can name that is as bitter about being what it is as this movie is. Say what you will about Batman v Superman, but Zack Snyder clearly likes Batman, and Ben Affleck clearly likes Batman, and there are scenes in that movie that are very enthusiastically made. Say what you will about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, we've said it all. But you know what? Mark Webb appears to really think Spider-Man is cool and does a good job shooting like Spider-Man swinging through New York. Name any other infamously bad superhero movie. The thing that separates Fantastic from all of them, and there are other things, I think its filmmaking is demonstrably worse, all of it, but the number one thing is, it thinks Fantastic Four is stupid. It thinks you're stupid for liking it, and it exists to make fun of the thing that it is, but not as a parody, as a bitter horror movie, maybe? It's weird. It is a movie that is angry to be there in a way that I'm not sure I've ever quite seen before, where the movie it's like if you go to a dinner party and the hosts are a married couple who are fighting, and they don't want to be there, and they don't want guests over, and it's man, I really want to leave and go home. This is uncomfortable. That's what this movie feels like.
Yeah, no, I think that's a interesting but also a weirdly accurate way to describe it. I mean, it's the way I feel about it is it's that movie that's at war with itself in this very bizarre way. I mean, obviously the movie had a weird, insane...
We'll talk about it in a second, yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So, and you can see the scars. It's a movie that you, at the end, you're like, I bet this movie has a lot of juicy stories behind the scenes about how it ended up the way it ended up. But I think another way to think about it, Josh Trank, obviously he did that movie Chronicle, it's one of the only other movies he made, which is the found footage superhero movie, which I have not seen. But this movie feels like it's one of those kinds of movies. Maybe an easier comparison point is there's that 2019 kind of slasher horror movie called Brightburn, that the concept is, what if Superman as a boy, what if he was sent here to kill humanity? There's a million, what if Superman was here to kill humanity? This one is specifically, and it ends up as a slasher horror movie kind of thing. But it's like that, except for it was actually literally a superhero movie, and it had the Superman license, and the director made a bunch of the movie like that, and then somebody sane walked into the room and said, what the fuck are you doing with the Superman license? What the fuck? This has to be a superhero movie. And then all of a sudden, it's and now Lex Luthor shows up, and Superman has to fight Lex Luthor and save the day. And let's forget the fact that we're setting up Superman as a serial killer for most of this film. Now he has to be a superhero. That's what this movie feels like. And it's just it's so fucking weird, because I've never seen another adaptation that has this kind of combative relationship with the source material. There are lots of bad superhero movies. There are no bad superhero movies that are bad in the ways that this movie is bad as adaptations. It's really, really fucking weird.
Yeah, so Chronicle is Josh Trank's directorial debut. It came out in 2012. It was written by Max Landis, the sex predator extraordinaire. So just a really great vintage for that movie. But that was the one it is a found footage sort of horror superhero movie where these three high schoolers get telekinetic powers, and then one of them, the one played by Dane DeHaan, who went from this to ruin Amazing Spider-Man 2, becomes evil and kills the others. And Michael B. Jordan is also in that one, in one of his first films. He'd done a lot of TV before then, obviously on The Wire and Friday Night Lights, but this is the period where Michael B. Jordan is starting to become a movie actor. And so, but he's only in the first half of that movie because the Dane DeHaan character kills him. And yeah, I saw Chronicle when it came out. And it was very acclaimed. It did well at the box office for what it was. It was a small budgeted movie. It made about 125 million, but on a budget of 15 million. So obviously, like, the multiplier there is huge. But, like, I will say I was probably, and I'm even looking at my old review of it, I think I was a little more down on it than other people. I thought the found footage side of it was, as it always is, a gimmick. It's just never a good idea. There's no such thing as a good found footage movie. Come at me if you want. You're wrong. And so, like, it was fine. But the idea that you would take Chronicle and then say, that's the person who should make Fantastic Four, is the dumbest idea in history. I don't even know what else to say. It's like if you went to see the fucking Zone of Interest, the Holocaust drama, and said, you know what? I think this Jonathan Glazer guy has to do the next Superman. Like, what are you talking about? And I mean, this is a different thing. Chronicle is not the Zone of Interest. Much, much better movie, obviously. But, like, why, like, on just a basic tonal level would these things connect for you, right?
Or
it's like...
It's like you took the team that is making The Boys for Amazon, you know, the adaptation of the Mark Miller comic book, that is a, like, parody, not like a comic parody, but it parodizes the Justice League and superheroes, and you're like, and now you guys go make a Justice League movie. It's like, why? Like, why? It's like, it is, I think I don't particularly enjoy the, like, independent comic thing of let's do our, like, it is these characters from comic books with the, you know, serial number filed off, and then we make them murder people and it's very gory. Like, I'm not particularly into that so much. But I'm fine with it existing. But it's like part of the way that it works is that it does have to be the characters with the serial numbers filed off. Like, you can't have it actually be the characters or it loses everything that it's trying to be. Like, you can't have Homelander actually be Superman. You can't have Omni-Man from Invincible literally be Superman. The whole, I think, conceit falls apart. It stops being a parody. You're not trying to be the thing at the same time while you're also parodizing the thing. Again, these are not like comic parodies, but they're parodizing it. And that's what Fanforstic is. It's like, it's trying to parodize the Fantastic Four while also being a Fantastic Four movie. It's like, you can't do that. Like, that's what, you know, that's the movie being at war with itself. It's trying to be two totally opposite things at the exact same time. And there's just no way for that to work. Like, that's just never going to happen. And if it was made by someone who was like a really talented director, it would probably still be a failure of a movie, but it could be an interesting failure. But because it's directed by Josh Trank, it's not even an interesting failure. It's just a failure in every other regard as well. But the core conceit of it just doesn't compute. And it's like, if you wanted to make this movie, you have to have it not literally be the Fantastic Four. You could have, you know, a stretchy dude in it. You can have an invisible lady in it. You can have a rock guy in it. And you can have a fire guy in it. But they can't be Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, Ben Grimm. They can't. They have to be different characters. And that would make the story work because you'd be able to do whatever the fuck you want with it, rather than having to somehow make it also be a Fantastic Four movie at the same time.
You're totally right. You said that really well. And, I mean, this all goes back to Watchmen. The Watchmen is the thing that everyone is cribbing from for this, and one of the things that Watchmen got right... Okay, Watchmen got everything right, but one of the many things it got right is that it does not use existing properties. It does not use existing characters, and I know that was... Alan Moore thought about doing that, couldn't get the rights, but that was a good thing that happened to him. Like, that honestly gave him his story, because if you were using existing heroes, it would feel very wrong. And the fact that he's able to create Rorschach and not, like, literally have Batman or some other, like, older DC hero in there allows that to have a lot more teeth than it otherwise would. And yes, it is the Fox, you know, so Chronicle comes out, it's a hit, they give, you know, Josh Trank the keys to the kingdom to make this thing, and he basically just goes about making Chronicle 2, but with the Fantastic Four characters, which is wrong in every conceivable way. And there were a lot of other problems. Like, as you say, if a talented director did that, it still probably wouldn't work for the reasons you're outlining. Josh Trank, nobody has ever flamed out of Hollywood as spectacularly as Josh Trank flamed out of Hollywood. That guy, he made Chronicle. He then, I mean, he was very young. He was the youngest director to open a film at #1 at the U.S. box office. He was 27 when Chronicle came out, and Chronicle went to #1, and that beat Steven Spielberg's record from Jaws when he was 28. So everyone thought, like, oh my God, Trank is the next big thing. He was talked about to be directing everything. He was linked to the first version of Venom, the Spider-Man spinoff. He was going to do an adaptation of Shadow of the Colossus for Sony, and And Lucasfilm hired him to make the Boba Fett movie. This is when they were doing all of their Star Wars story movies, and he was hired to do that. In the meantime, he's working on Fantastic Four, and this is his first big-budget movie. Chronicle did well, but remember, Chronicle is a low-budget kind of indie thing. Fantastic Four is a big-budget studio movie, and apparently everything went wrong on set. There's a lot of stuff people are not going to come out and say for various reasons, but a lot of it has been reported out, and some of people have said it. Like, Kate Mara has said this was an absolutely miserable fucking experience. But, like, we know Josh Trank melted down on that set. He was not communicative with people. He was not good with the actors. He did a bad job running that set. He was removed from the Star Wars movie, not because of how Fantastic Four performed at the box office or anything, but because of what Kathleen Kennedy heard through the grapevine about how he was handling Fantastic Four and said, I'm not having anyone that unprofessional over here in Star Wars land. So, you know, good instincts there, obviously, and then that eventually became the Book of Boba Fett, which is fine. And so all of that happened. But yeah, so Josh Trank completely flames out. When the week the movie was set to be released into theaters, he publicly started bashing it on Twitter and had a whole social media meltdown. He eventually deleted all of his socials a few years later. He had a lot of very combative, like, meltdowns on social media. And he has directed one movie since, which was an independently produced movie about, what was it? Al Capone, sorry. And that Al Capone movie is apparently very weird, and it is mostly about Capone dying of syphilis, and it is not very well reviewed. And yeah, so Josh Trank, weird career, totally flamed out. After he delivered his initial cut of the movie, which was unfinished to begin with. He has since, like, acknowledged this, that, like, there's no way you could do a director's cut of this movie because he didn't finish shooting his version of the movie. And then later on, basically, they brought in other people who finished the film, including world-class hack Simon Kinberg, the guy who ruined X-Men multiple times. Simon Kinberg is the guy who did the Dark Phoenix saga wrong, not once, but twice. Writing X-Men The Last Stand and writing and directing The Dark Phoenix, because Simon Kinberg is one of the worst people in Hollywood. I don't know how he is as a person, but in terms of talent, one of the worst. So he basically came in and finished the movie. You can very clearly tell what was reshot because A, it's on the worst green screen work I have ever seen. Like that scene where Reed is in the forest, or a lot of the stuff at the end on like the Planet Zero, you can tell is reshot because of how bad the green screen is. And because Kate Mara had gone off and like had a haircut, dyed her hair, whatever. So they gave her a wig, but the wig doesn't match anything else in the movie. So you'll go from shot to shot and Kate Mara just looks completely different because she has a totally different hairdo. And it is very bad and very funny. And yeah, it is such a bizarre movie because the Josh Trank side of it is an awful version of an awful idea, which is what if we did Fantastic Four as sort of David Cronenberg body horror? And that is, and like, guys, if you ever think you're David Cronenberg, you probably aren't, so stop it. But like, second, it's just a really awful version of that, but then it is trying to like, the reshot material and some of the other probably studio mandated stuff is trying to like get some degree of fun in there. It's like, we clearly need to shoot a scene where like Kate Mara and Miles Teller flirt because there's no actual romance, but we need something, so we'll have that. You know, we need a big fight scene on Planet Zero at the end. We need a really awful, pandering, terrible joke at the end where Miles Teller almost says the words Fantastic Four, but then we cut to black before he does it, because you remember in Avengers Age of Ultron when he said Avengers, and then it cut? Joss Whedon did it, so we should do it. Just awful. Every level of it. Awful, awful, awful.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's just horrendous. It is a fascinating and very fun Wikipedia page to go down, though, because they're like, after you see the movie, there's just so much, like, so many quotes by people involved in the production that are in here from, like, pre-release interviews that are obviously trying to hype up the movie, that when you see the movie, and the best one is this one from Simon Kinberg that I just want to read out loud, because it's so, when you see the movie, it's just like, what the fuck is this dude saying? This is from the interview from 2014, so before the movie came out. And Simon Kinberg, you just detailed for us, awful hack. He said, the Fantastic Four movie is sort of a celebration of all the Fantastic Four comics that have preceded it. We have elements from the original Fantastic Four that there's a sort of optimism and inspirational quality to the film. In some ways, a comedy that was really distinct in the original Fantastic Four. Also, the notion of this dysfunctional surrogate family that comes together and has to work together is very present in the movie. That owes a great debt to the originals. And this idea that they are scientists and that it's almost like this science adventure more than being superheroes. We also owe a lot to the Ultimates in the current crop of Fantastic Four comics. So other than the thing he says at the end about them owing a lot to the Ultimates, which I'll talk about in a second, everything he said there is like was on opposite day. It's like it's the polar opposite of every trait of the movie. The celebrating the Fantastic Four comics, owing things to the original comics, that this just has no resemblance to anything from the original version of Fantastic Four at all. The comedy element that is not there. The family comes together at the end element. I guess it technically happens, but they don't actually like develop it.
Sean, I don't think Reed Richards and Johnny Storm interact before the last scene of the movie.
No,
I don't think they say anything.
They don't say anything, but they do have a montage where they looked at each other. They do a fist bump that doesn't work because Reed is a nerd. Like, that's the extent of the interaction. But they do technically have all four of them together at the end in the most horribly written scene I've ever seen in the movie. But the part of that quote that really just kills me is him saying there's a sort of optimism and inspirational quality to the film, which, like, if there's any proof that there isn't a vengeful god, it's the fact he wasn't smoten on the fucking spot by a bolt of lightning the moment he said that, because that's the biggest lie any human being has ever fucking said in the history of the human race.
It is so wrong. I just want to, Kathleen Kennedy, her instincts can be good because she fired Josh Trank, but apparently Simon Kinberg has been hired by Lucasfilm to write the next Star Wars trilogy. So, that's never going to happen because it's a Star Wars movie that they're trying to make, and none of those will ever happen. But definitely the last person on Earth I want around Star Wars is Simon Kinberg. Just, like, how many franchises are you allowed to ruin before Hollywood kicks you out? If you're white and have a dick, apparently it is infinite. It is an endless list of franchises you can ruin. Anyway, it is hilarious. I mean, Sean, I just want to hear you talk about this as someone who has read comics, has more of a pre-existing relationship with the Fantastic Four than I do. What does this movie get wrong?
So first we have to talk about what is this movie actually adapting, because it isn't adapting the classic Fantastic Four comic books. What it is adapting for the first act, and honestly, like, relatively faithfully for the first act, is the Ultimate Fantastic Four comics. So in the early 2000s, Marvel started releasing a second line of comics set in its own continuity, removed from the main line continuity of Marvel Comics that had been going since 1961 with Fantastic Four #1, and that was called the Ultimate line of comics, which started with Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Brian Michael Bendis, which is like one of the all-time great runs of Spider-Man. Like, if you like Spider-Man and you want to read some good Spider-Man comic books, Ultimate Spider-Man is there. Ultimate Spider-Man was a massive hit, huge success. And so Marvel started a bunch of other comics set in the Ultimate Universe, which included Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four, and the Ultimates, which was the ultimate version of the Avengers. And you also had, like, some one-shots. I think there's, like, Ultimate Iron Man. I don't think ever was a proper full series, but it had, like, one-shots and stuff. But the thing with the Ultimate Universe was that Ultimate Spider-Man was the only one that was actually good. Like, the other ones varied from, like, middling to bad. And a big part of that is that one of the primary creative figures involved in the creation of the other Ultimate comics was Mark Millar. Mark Millar is a comic book writer who is, like, he is the guy who made The Boys in the comic book form. If you have seen The Boys TV show and liked The Boys TV show, which I seen the first season and thought was good, note that they made lots of very important changes from The Boys comics. I know that there are Mark Millar fans out there. I really do not like Mark Millar's stuff. It is like the definition.
It's so edgelord bullshit.
Yes.
Oh my God.
It's the definition of edgelord bullshit. And so that's where Ultimate Fantastic Four was a collaboration early on for Volume 1 basically was a collaboration between Brian Michael Bendis, writer for Ultimate Spider-Man and lots of other things, and Mark Millar. And Ultimate Fantastic Four, I read the first couple of volumes back when they were relatively new, when I was in, like, middle school. And I remember them being, like, okay-ish and then getting really bad at a certain point. Like, I didn't go back and reread them for this. I don't care enough to do that. But it was like Fantastic Four with a lot of the edgy stuff in there, but a lot of the changes here of, like, they're much younger. A lot of the changes to the specific backstories, the whole thing of like Franklin Storm and the Baxter Institute, the change of instead of them going to space, they're going to this other dimension, which in the comics is called the negative or the end zone. Like Victor Von Doom or Van Damme in the Ultimate Comics, like his role here as this like rival scientist at the Baxter Institute, all those elements are pulling from Ultimate Fantastic Four, including like Reed's whole garage project of trying to build the teleporter, him coming from this very poor background and Ben being his friend. Like all that stuff is from the Ultimate Fantastic Four comic books. So like that's one of the big things you have to understand watching this movie if you're curious about its relationship with the Fantastic Four, is those fundamental changes are not inventions of the film. They're all inventions of Ultimate Fantastic Four, which is an understandable choice to make because that was the most recent attempt to really update the Fantastic Four storyline. But it is also, I think, a poor choice to make because I don't think those are particularly good comics. I think that like it is better to do what the 2005 movie did, because Ultimate Fantastic Four was a thing at that point already, to say, let's take the classic Fantastic Four and do simple things to update it, but make it resemble what the classic Fantastic Four was. And this is trying to just do the Ultimate Fantastic Four thing. But like beyond that, what I think is just like, I don't even know where you start with this movie. I don't have to finish the sentence. I was going to say beyond that, what this movie gets wrong, like where's the list start there? I think the most fundamental thing, if I had to pick one thing beyond what we already talked about with it being a movie at war with itself, it is that it just does not understand any single character, even if you're saying it's the Ultimate Fantastic Four. Even if you're starting from that point, this is trying to do those versions of the characters that are younger, that are trying to be edgier, that have that kind of Mark Miller-ness to them. Like, even then, those comic books still, like, you felt like it's trying to be the Fantastic Four. Like, this is trying to be a version of Reed Richards, a version of Ben Grimm, a version of Sue Storm, a version of Johnny Storm, and it is trying to depict the relationship of those four people together. And that's just not what this movie is doing. It's not what this movie's interested in. It's not what it cares about. And it is like the incredible minimal level of interaction between any of the members of the quote-unquote Fantastic Four in this movie is so shocking. Like, it's so unbelievable that none of them have a relationship. Like, there's not a single developed relationship amongst the group. Like, I can understand if, like, oh, maybe for this movie, we didn't really do a lot of Johnny and Sue stuff, and we didn't really develop the brother-sister thing. Or, oh, maybe this movie, we never really got around to the Reed-Sue romance. But I can't accept that you made a Fantastic Four movie that you didn't do any of them. You didn't do a single relationship. The closest it gets is Sue and Johnny and Ben and Reed, because there's scenes early on that set up these two characters are friends and these two characters are brother and sister. Like, they tell that to you and you get like one interaction between them. But other than that, like, there's no relationship there, and they don't bother with any of the other combinations. I mean, the notion that you would make a Fantastic Four movie and you just don't have a dynamic between Johnny and Ben Grimm, which is the most home run character relationship amongst the group because it's the most fun. Like, there is a reason why that is one of the main pairings the Tim Story movies went really hard in on, is because it's the most fun pairing that you get a lot of good material out of from the comics. And those two in this movie have just no relationship. They have no connection. They're not even like acquaintances. Like, it's like Ben Grimm showed up and got turned into the Thing like 5 minutes after, I guess, he was technically introduced. I don't even know if they show Reed going like, and this is Johnny Storm. That might be like the most of it. It's like so peculiar that you would not develop a single relationship amongst that kind of central quartet. And then it is particularly insulting that you would then try to end the movie with a shot of the four of them all together being like, and now we're a team. It's like, dude, have you guys even had a dinner together, let alone put together a superhero team?
No, you're totally right. And it is, there are so many other problems. This movie we could talk about for hours and never touch the bottom of it. But I do think that is like that is the most basic problem. Is it's so disinterested in these characters and the relationships between them. You start it also, this movie to me is insufferable from the word go. Like, it had 3 strikes against it 3 minutes in, and here are the strikes. For strike 1 is it does the worst version of the Reed Richards' smart thing you could do, which is that he's a boy genius, so gifted that without going to school or researching or anything, he can like build an extra dimensional portal in his garage. Like, no, I don't. I know we say like Reed Richards' superpower is his intelligence, but that's not literally what it is. Like, he had to study and learn stuff. Yeah. I hate the boy genius shit. Is so dumb, where it's just like he was gifted by God with knowledge of the other dimensions. It's the worst. That's like a Disney Channel movie. Like, I don't need that in my fucking Fantastic Four movie.
It's that, and that like somehow he can build the teleporter shit, but he seems to understand nothing about it. Like, I keep like, is he supposed to be smart or not? Because it feels like he doesn't understand anything about the teleporter that he built. I'm like, how does that make any fucking sense? It's like they want. I mean, it's part of the Mark Miller-ness of it that it's inherited from Ultimate Fantastic Four and heightened is the phenomenon of everybody's an asshole. And that's the Mark Miller disease that this movie has, very much contracted. Yes. And that includes like Reed having to kind of be this like weird, he's both smart, but he's also kind of an idiot, and he's also kind of a dick, because that's true of like everybody in the movie. And that comes with like the way they treat that boy genius stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, so I fucking hate that. Then you have, as he's in school and he's trying to present something, the teacher's like, last week it was a stupid flying car, and now it's... I'm like, okay, well, you've already made fun of the idea of the Fantastic Car, so fuck, yep. I know this isn't going to be a real Fantastic Four thing, so that sucks. And then you have the infamous scene of, and maybe this is from the Ultimate Comics, I don't know. If it is there, it's dumb there too, of Ben Grimm being abused by his brother, who comes in and says it's clobberin' time, and that's where that comes from. And already you're like, okay, so this movie has open, active contempt for the idea of the Fantastic Four, and it's doing the dumb boy genius thing, and it's unsubtle as all get out. I hate this movie. I fucking hate it, and we're 3 minutes in, and then it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. Ben Grimm is kind of only there at the outset, and then he isn't called back in until Reed gets fucking drunk, decides to go to the other dimension, calls Ben over, and like... That is such a horrifying version of how Ben Grimm becomes the Thing, that Reed just walked out of his life for like 20 years, gets drunk one night, decides to abuse the technology he built, and invites Ben over for some fun, and then Ben gets trapped in the Thing's body. This movie should have Ben Grimm breaking Reed over his leg like fucking Bane and Batman. That's what should happen in this movie, and it doesn't. It's bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so much here. Like, there's just it's that, like, one thing I do want to touch on is that like everybody feels like an asshole in this movie, like except for like the one person who doesn't is to use this phrase very intentional, the wise black man, right? You have Franklin Richards is the only like compassionate person in the entire thing. And it, there's a whole, obviously tradition and trope there it's leaning on. And of course, like, because he's the only guy who's not an asshole, he's the person who has to die. And it's all that shit. But it's just like top down. It's like just this constant oppressive feeling of everybody's a piece of shit. And oftentimes in ways that don't make sense. Like there's this very weird scene at the, where they have the science fair where it's like, you've got, Reed and Ben, who are supposed to, I assume, be like in high school. They obviously look like they're like 20 years old because they are. But like
they look like they're 30 because they are. They do not look like even 20. They don't look like college students. They look 30 because they were.
Sure, yes, but like whatever, they look like actors trying to have to pretend like they're high schoolers. But assuming they're supposed to be high schoolers, even then, like, why are they in a science fair with like a bunch of 5th graders? Like, it's like, right? What is happening? Like, why? You do realize that, like, it's not an all-ages event. Like, we split those things up by grade level. It's kind of like how that shit works. And he's got his little teleporter thing, and the teachers show up to look at it, and he demonstrates the teleporter, and they're like, oh, well, I don't see any science here, Mr. Richards. This all just is a big magic show. You're going to have to pay for the backboard. And I'm sitting here being like, dude, even if you assume that, like, I just am not going to believe that they teleported, he created like a huge electrical discharge that like blacked out the room and fucking created a sonic wave that blew up the glass on the backboard. That alone is a more impressive science project than any other science project here. Even if all that is he created a fucking sonic boom. That's all that like that is a science project. Like it's like why these people are just they're just mean for no reason. It's like it just really gets on my nerves that every character is like that. Every random person that shows up is just an absolute fucking asshole for no reason at all, including all of our main characters. And that is at least the scene that you're talking about of where they get their powers, which is just, like people make fun of like Prometheus, and I've done this because I do think it's a silly part of the movie for how dumb the characters feel, and they're constantly doing things that feel ridiculously stupid for these characters to do. Like fucking Fan Four Stick is on a whole other level. Like I have never seen a scene more like what are these characters even doing than them supposedly getting drunk. Although I do think there is like some production thing that happened where it feels like they did two different versions of it. One version where the actors are playing it like they're drunk, one version like they're not, because it feels like from take to take, they're giving totally different performances. Like, I don't know what's going on.
You're probably right. You're almost certainly right. I mean, that is probably what happened, yes. And
it just feels like it's all kind of intercut together in this weird jumble. But they're like, where the justification is supposed to be that they're vaguely drunk. Although, even in the takes where it feels like the actors are playing it and they're supposed to be drunk, it's mostly like they feel like they've got a buzz. Like they're not like, like incapacitated to the point that they should be doing something this fucking insane. But whatever, I'll accept they get drunk and they all get together and they get into their machine that goes to the negative zone because they want to be the first people in Planet Zero, not the negative zone. That's the comic book version. I don't know why they changed the name. It's the same in every other regard. But they go to Planet Zero because they want to be the first out there because everyone knows Neil Armstrong's name and not...
Pause for a second?
Yes, do we want to... Yeah, let's go ahead and tackle that part before we move on because this part is also insane.
There's this part where Tim Blake Nelson is supposed to be like the douchebag like government guy, and he comes in, sees the successful test, and says, "Great, we'll get the people from NASA working on this." And then all of our characters are aghast that they aren't allowed to go to the negative zone or Planet Zero, and it's supposed to be played like Tim Blake Nelson is being an unreasonable asshole, but like what he's suggesting is that astronauts do the astronaut stuff.
Yes.
That like we have people, you are the scientists who build the thing, and then we have people who are trained to go on the mission, and we use them. This is the most logical thing anyone could possibly say. The people who built the Saturn V didn't get in it and go to space.
Yes.
That's not how this works. The astronauts and the people who built the thing are separate things. That's how it has always been. That's how it always will be. That's how it should be, because it is a smart division of labor, and they play it like the Tim Blake Nelson character is the bad guy for saying, it's like saying, you shouldn't drive drunk. It's like, he told us not to drive drunk, that asshole. It's like, he's just talking sense. That's all he's doing.
Yeah, like, I was so aghast at that moment because, like, there's this weird moment where I couldn't understand what was happening. Because he says, like, yeah, we'll get NASA and they'll have them help us. And then it cuts to all the other characters. They give this look to each other. I'm like, what's what's even happening? And then I realized, like, oh, the thing is that they're offended because they want to be the first people to go to the other dimension and not have the astronauts people trained to do it. And it's like, that's how everything works. It's not like, at whatever factory that was, creating the fucking AR-15. It's like, well, I think this model's good. Let's get the whole engineering team and parachute them to fucking Vietnam. Like, let's go. It's like, that's not how it works. It's like, there are different people with different expertise that are involved in this overall project. Some of them are going to invent the tools. Other of them are going to use the tools or explore or whatever. And it is just a totally insane moment that then Victor Von Doom later has his whole explanation of like, oh, but, the people who invented who are they? They must have died penniless. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they didn't die penniless. Like, I think they worked for NASA and had a fucking salary, and had like very...
And then retired with a pension? Yeah.
Yes, it's like, because also I think part of the like and obviously we're like Victor Von Doom's supposed to be wrong because he's the bad guy, but also nobody ever puts up an argument against the thing of like, but does anyone remember the name of the guy who invented the space shuttle? It's like, well, the problem is that there was not a guy who invented the space shuttle, because that's not how it works. The thing with like, one of the reasons Neil Armstrong is because there's only a couple of people who were on the fucking moon. It's like can't know the names of every person involved in the production of the fucking rockets. It's just this like weird argument he makes about wanting to like have his name recorded in history. It's just like, whatever. It's so fucking dumb. It's such the loosest explanation. So even the explanation of why they're going to the Planet Zero is very silly. But they go to Planet Zero because they're confident it's going to work because they sent a chimp there that was in the capsule, and then they brought it back with the chimp still in the capsule. So one like a detail of this that is very silly is like they've never tested the fucking suits. Nothing went outside. Like that's still totally unknown. They also didn't, and this also never comes up. They didn't like see if the chimp had any like. It's the night after the chimp came back. Like they haven't done medical checks on the chimp, because I kept on thinking that like what would happen is like, oh, slowly the chimp would die or get weird defects or something. Which I think maybe that's what happens in Ultimate Fantastic Four, because I have such a strong impression of that. But I might be making that, or that's just like The Fly or something. There's this is in lots of movies, like body horror movies. But anyways, they have no reason to believe that they would be safe getting out of the capsule, but they get out of the capsule. Up to that point, it's a lot of dumb things, but I can accept that these characters would do these dumb things. It needs to happen for the movie to work, whatever. From here is where it goes insane. Because then they're like looking out at the landscape and they put down the flag and it creates a surge of green energy that goes off to the distance. And they're like, look, it looks like the energy's traveled over there. And then they get out like rappelling gear and they rappel down a sheer cliff face, what looks like fucking like half a mile to go down to where the energy is. It's like, why do you even have that equipment? And how do you even know how to use it? And why the fuck are you rappelling down this giant cliff face in the fucking alien dimension that nobody has ever been to? Why wouldn't you just go back? It's fucking crazy. But they go all the way down the cliff face, then they go look at the big pile of green energy, and then they start fucking around with it and poking it and shit. It's like, what is happening? Like, how is this even... It doesn't make any sense. They go so far out of their way to fuck themselves up. It's so unnecessary. I don't understand why you would write this sequence like this. It's not, like, it's enough for them to go there and get out of the pod, and then that start creating a series of events that causes the accident to occur. You don't need them to fucking go on a fucking Green Beret mission to get the fucking green goo and start playing in the green goo to get the fucking bad shit to go down. It is like the stupidest sequence of events I think I've ever seen characters engage in a movie. And it's just like, it makes you just wish that all the people involved in the mission died immediately, because it's like the most unbelievable part of that whole sequence is that they somehow make it back to be able to start getting in the fucking thing. Because the one thing they kind of, skim over is the entire process of them having to climb back up that fucking cliff face on a single rope. Like they're fucking Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 2. It's like,
yes.
This is so crazy. Like, this is Reed Richards, like a 19-year-old boy genius. When did he learn how to fucking mountain climb with a single rope and rappelling gear? Like, this is fucking weird as shit.
It's weird as shit. Then you get basically the whole body horror sequence where Reed like wakes up with all his limbs stretched out, and then they rush like hell through that. Yeah. We see one brief appearance of Ben in the Thing form, and then Reed is an unconscionable coward and abandons his friends and just leaves. And then we get the 1 year later card. Yes. And we skip over completely. We never see Sue discover or grapple with her powers. We never see Johnny discover or grapple with his powers. And the Thing is now a government asset going and like, I don't know, doing coups or something. Yeah. And so you have all of that. And then the movie just I mean, it had already fallen apart. It never built itself up, but it just collapses because we're already like an hour into the movie, and this is a 100-minute movie, which means 90 without credits. And then we basically just speed run the last half hour of the movie where Reed had run away, but he gets brought back, so he didn't need to run away. That just is a plot cul-de-sac.
Yes.
Then he's back, and they need to rebuild the thing. They get back to Planet Zero. Victor was left there. Now he's Doctor Doom. He wants to destroy shit. They fight him, and the movie ends. And that is where, like, clearly, like, I think the first hour of the movie, up until the 1 year later, is basically the movie Josh Trank was making, probably a very truncated version of it. And then that last half hour, where this movie just doesn't have a second act. It just skips that. It just goes from first act to third act. And that third act clearly is, like, mostly reshot. So, like, then we have this other thing. And it's, like, it's hard to even talk about it as a coherent film because it isn't. It's so clearly an unfinished, patched-together movie where it is one movie, a very, very, very bad, confused movie for about an hour. And then it is just a different thing with some, like, flavorings from the first hour still in there. But, you know, again, you never get to see half the team learn about their powers. You never really get to see Ben deal with being the Thing. That happens off screen. Yep. Everyone's mad and sad at each other. There is suddenly a action scene at the end, and then they are standing around in the worst written scene in the history of Hollywood cinema, talking about how we're going to be a team now. What should we call ourselves? It's fantastic. What did you say? We can be the... cut to credits. And it's just like you get out of the movie and there's so much whiplash because it never was a movie at any point. It's like a collection of scenes that then becomes a different kind of collection of scenes, and then it smash cuts to black on the worst line possible.
Yeah, I mean, it is just like a totally incomprehensible mess of a movie where it feels like that 1 year later... like, everything with that feels like it is, like, three different kind of parts of a movie that just got thrown together. Because there's lots of, like, little things that are sort of vaguely set up that are never followed through in any way. In particular, like, you know, I mean, the movie is almost over by the time this happens. Because, like you said, like, you've only got, like, something like 30 minutes left by the time that 1 year later happens. So there's it wouldn't even be possible for the movie to actually pay this shit off, because all of it should have been done within the first 40 minutes of the movie if this is what it wanted to do. But you have all this stuff of Reed after he's escaped. He's been spending that year, clearly he's building another portal to Planet Zero because he's trying to find a cure for everybody. Everybody else are tools of basically like the CIA or some other shadowy government organization. And it's just this weird mess of, like, we want to find the cure, so we got to get Reed, but also we're all tools of the CIA that are using us because we're assets that they're using for coups or assassinations or whatever. Ben has killed dozens and dozens of people, as you see, like, he's looking at footage of himself in some foreign country killing people, and it says, like enemies, targets killed, 43, or something like that at the bottom. Like, the notion that we get Reed back, he finishes the portal, and then we can cure ourselves is so laughably naive. No character could possibly believe that's the case after they've been contained by the military for an entire fucking year as they're using you as fucking military assets. And, like, I think, like, clearly what the plot would be from those pieces would be eventually them getting Reed, them thinking we can finish the portal, and Doctor Doom comes through, and we fucked all that up, and we realize that, like, really this never would have gotten the powers fixed all along, but luckily Reed has his other portal he's been building. We can come together as a team, finish that portal, go over to the other side, and do whatever we need to do to stop Doctor Doom, and maybe realize that really we need the powers, because the powers, you know, it's not something we're fighting against. It's part of who we are, or whatever message you want to have in a proper Fantastic Four story. Like, it's got suggestions of these vague pieces there that you see in little tiny things that are in the movie, but there's no follow through on it. Like, it never grapples, because it doesn't have time to, with the notion, which is a big fucking idea to deal with, of the fucking, all these superheroes are agents of the fucking government against their will and are being used to kill enemy targets. And that then Sue does this horrifying thing of then, like, bringing Reed Richards into that situation to get a cure that they're never going to be able to use. Like, it's just, none of it makes any sense. And the movie can't deal with any of that material because it doesn't have time. It doesn't feel like it cares to deal with it. But it's like a lot of weird shit to throw together to get to the point of we're back on Planet Zero, when it really has not been that long of runtime in the movie since we were there the first time. Like, it's only been 10 or 15 minutes. It's not been like a big chunk of film since that. So it doesn't feel like we've been away from that section. And then we find Doctor Doom there, and then he's evil. Only he's not evil at first, because it seems like his motivation is just leave me the fuck alone. I'm fine over here. And then he decides, fuck it, I guess I'll destroy the Earth too. There's like a weird, his motivation gets very muddled all of a sudden, where he has to be the bad guy and they have to stop him. It is just this incredible, rushed, weird mess to try to get to there's a giant laser in the sky and we gotta stop it ending of a superhero movie.
Yeah, it's completely terrible. And, there is probably a better version of the movie in so much as it would be a more consistent version, but it would never have been good. Like, there's not like a hidden director's cut out there. And like, this is a case where clearly they were in some kind of triage trying to finish this. Because I say there might have been a more consistent, there might not have been. Because they did, when the studio screened the movie, realized they had a disaster on their hands. When they saw like the first cut, the movie still was not finished. They had not really finalized or filmed an ending. Like, they didn't know how the movie was going to end. And so they basically kicked Trank out. They did these very hurried reshoots where on Wikipedia it says that new scenes were being written on the days of the reshoots. That's how rushed this was. And then an editor, Stephen E. Rifkin, was hired to edit the film together and was basically the de facto director for the final cut. And Trank was cut out of the movie. And I think that's purely because, like, the studio realized, okay, this guy is a fucking erratic weirdo. The cast does not like him. And he didn't really finish the movie even. And it's just about, like, it's that editor was probably just trying to make the most coherent thing he could out of bad pieces. I always try to remind people that if you see a movie with bad editing, it's almost never that the editor is unskilled at their job. Anyone who is editing on a Hollywood movie is very sufficient at what they do. Like, there doesn't exist like a bad editor working at that level. It's because they were given pieces that don't go together. And you can be the best editor in the world, but if you don't have all the pieces, there's nothing you can do, right? Like, the director had to shoot for what you have. And so this movie is completely incoherent. It's the kind of thing where, honestly, Sean, I've never seen this and thought this to myself, but like, if any movie you were ever going to do the tax write-off thing, the David Zaslav just delete the movie, I don't know why they released this. I honestly don't know. Like, when you look at what they had, like, if this is the best thing they could put together of, like, get a movie out in theaters that's about 90 minutes so we can try to recoup something, they didn't recoup fucking anything. This movie bombed bad. Like, it probably would have been worth more to them to just do, if the Zaslav approach had been, if that Pandora's box had been opened in 2015, that's probably what would have happened to this. Like, this was not in a releasable state.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely felt like there was a crossroads at some point in the development of this film where it was like, where they probably should have taken the path that said, let's cut our losses and just not finish this movie. And instead they went down, let's do a bunch of reshoots and all that shit. It does lead to some of the most torturous shit in the entire movie. I mean, one, just like the moment once you realize that, like, we have to do a bunch of, like, superhero shots with these characters, it's so weird. It's such an inexplicable shift in the style of the movie, where we have to, like, do our, like, kind of low angle frame with, like, Reed Richards standing there trying to be, well, Miles Teller trying to stand there, be looking heroic, which is like, I like Miles Teller fine. I don't have a strong opinion about him as an actor, but, like, that's not the character he's been playing. That's not the actor I would cast to play the character that needs to do their superhero cool shot. Every shot they try to have with all four of the Fantastic Four together as though they're the actually Fantastic Four. In the ending climax is so fucking funny. Like, it's so, like, unintentionally hilarious, the ending of this movie, because it's so out of left field, the notion that this is a superhero movie now and we need superhero movie shots. It's just like, that's not who these characters have been. Like, this isn't Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, Invisible Woman, and the Human Torch, because they've never been superheroic in any way, shape, or form at all for the entire movie. And yet now all of a sudden they have to do that. But then you get to the ending of this movie, that is I have found a transcript online because
good.
Some of it just deserves to be read out loud. So you have this whole sequence where they're trying to decide what their name should be. They are at the this weird fucking mysterious government research facility in the middle of a jungle that I don't know. I was expecting, we're going to be at the Baxter Building in New York City. No, we're somewhere. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck all that shit is. And they're like, we'll name this place the Franklin Storm Research Center, blah, blah, blah. And then Reed says, I think that the four of us should have a name. Why would we need a name? Because we're a team now, and there's four of us, so we should come up with a name for it. The great dialogue. It's like, we're a team now, and there's four of us. Why would he say that? Why would he say that there's four of us? Who does that as a team? Who comes together? It's like, hey guys, man, we're a real team, and there is 8 of us, so we should come up with a name. What?
We're a baseball team. There's 9 of us,
Yes, exactly. It's just and so we're the gnarly 9 or whatever. He's leading to. Human Torch has the idea, the Human Torch and the Torchettes. This is the first time the word human or the name Human Torch is used in the entire movie. So if you don't know who the Fantastic Four are, you're like, what the fuck are you even saying? Human Torch is obviously not a normal superhero name. It's not Fireman or whatever. And Ben's like, are you kidding me? How about the big brain and his neurons? And Sue gets her girl power moment. She says, how about the big brain and her neurons? It's like, there you go. That's showed Ben. And then you get, this is one of the worst ones. Johnny then says, how about 2 guys, a girl, and the thing that nobody wanted, and looks at Ben. And this is where you're like, oh, they're trying to do their snappy superhero dialogue, but that might be the first line of dialogue Johnny has directed towards Ben Grimm in the entire movie, other than maybe a what's up when they first meet, something like that.
Also,
even an unscripted line. And so,
that's not fun, playful ribbing.
Yes.
That's so abusive. That's so much worse than anything Chris Evans ever said to the Michaelis Chiklis character. Just turning to a guy you've never met and going, hey, you're the thing that nobody wanted. Oh, what the fuck?
It's so fucking... It is like when he says that, the reaction you expect Reed and Sue to have is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, fuck, we gotta talk about this. It's some shit's going down there. It is a very, it's such a cruel, mean-spirited line. That, yeah, even if it was the Chris Evans, Michael Chiklis versions of the character, it's still a lot meaner than the stuff that he said. But you also have to have the relationship between the characters of that, they kind of give each other shit. That hasn't been established at all. So it's just this totally psychopathic remark from this guy. It's and the thing that nobody wanted. And so you have that shit. And then Reed, after a little bit of other back and forth, Reed turns to Ben and says, well, we've come a long way since the garage. And Ben, because this is such a Ben Grimm line, he says, gotta say, it's fantastic. Because fantastic is totally a natural word that you just assume that Ben Grimm would come up with. And Reed goes, say that again. It's fantastic. Yes, it is. Guys, I got it. Ready? And Fantastic Four, the logo pops up on screen with the theme song, the totally unmemorable theme song. And it is the most torturous exchange of dialogue I have ever seen in a movie. It must last less than a minute, but it feels like a fucking eternity. It's like you're in the fucking room of spirit and time in Dragon Ball. It's let me the fuck out of here, this white void of where you're trying to pretend that these characters have a dynamic. They've got a relationship with each other. They can be snarky. And also you're and this is a movie where you do fun little clever setups for our reference for the name. It's this is the movie where Ben Grimm has killed 50 people as a shadowy operative for the American government. I'm sorry, this is not the movie that gets to do your... I mean, it's bad even in movies that I otherwise like. This is always bad, what they're doing here. There's no good version of this, but there are tolerable versions of this, and this is intolerable. It's unacceptable. It is I sometimes get that kind of like cringe reaction that makes it hard for me to watch like cringe humor stuff. This just gives like, well, it makes the British Office look like a breeze to watch on the cringe humor factor. And that's trying to be cringe humor. This is just like my social like awareness response. It gets so triggered so intensely. Like I had a hard time watching this exchange of dialogue because it's so, the secondhand embarrassment for everybody involved is so intense that I had literal like goosebumps in like this, fuck, I gotta turn this off kind of way. It is profoundly bad, the scene at the end of this movie. Like, it's on some other fucking level they've discovered.
And this is all part of a trend in non-Marvel superhero movies at the time, where you had all these fucking movies. This movie did it, Amazing Spider-Man did it, Man of Steel did it, where the character, they never become the hero. Like, Superman never does normal Superman stuff until Zod shows up. Spider-Man never does any normal Spider-Man stuff in Amazing Spider-Man. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, now I'll be the superhero you know after the credits roll. Not in this movie. Maybe in the future I'll do it. And it's such an annoying, stupid way to approach these characters. This is by far the worst version of it, though.
Yes.
Like, at least in like Man of Steel has lots of good things in it. You know, like Henry Cavill is a good take on the character, even if like a lot of those structural things don't work for him. You know, Amazing Spider-Man has like, hey, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield have really good chemistry. You know, it has something you can hang your hat on. This, there's just abso-fucking-lutely nothing. And I mean, what's extra funny is like, the cast here is really good. Like, I think Miles Teller is fundamentally miscast. I don't think he's right for any version of Reed Richards' Ultimate whatever. And I think Miles Teller has fairly limited utility as an actor. But, like, you've got fucking Michael B. Jordan in here as Johnny Storm. That should be the easiest layup in the history of Hollywood. Like, Michael B. Jordan has bigger movie star energy than anybody else in his age cohort, like roughly, which is like our age, right? He's a little bit older. But like, he is the most movie star dude, and he's barely in this, barely gets to do anything, just nothing. Kate Mara as Sue Storm, that should be great. Kate Mara is awesome. She's, can definitely project intelligence, all of those things, barely in the movie. Jamie Bell should be a great Ben Grimm in The Thing. Jamie Bell rocks. Nothing. Just absolutely nothing. Toby Kebbell, I actually think is cool casting as Victor Von Doom, and could do like an actual version of Doctor Doom. Has nothing to do here. And in the last half of the movie, I'm not sure he's I am sure. He is not on set. He is not in the movie for the last half. Like, he is definitely somebody else that he maybe did some ADR for. Like, it is so stupid. The only actor who gets any kind of, like, substance at all is probably Reggie Cathy as Dr. Franklin Storm, but it is what you just said, Sean. It's the magical Negro archetype. It's completely that, and it's completely wrong. And yeah, just the whole thing fucking sucks.
The whole thing fucking sucks. They should have just put that on the fucking box.
They might as well have. I mean, Sean, the stats of this are amazing. This has the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of any movie ever based on a Marvel comic property at 9%. It had, at the time, the lowest cinema score that a superhero movie had gotten from, like, a major, like, Hollywood superhero movie. It completely bombed at the box office. It made $160 million on what is a reported $120 million budget, but is believed to be closer, probably with all those reshoots, in the range of, like, $200 million. Does not look that expensive, but, oh my god. So yeah, complete failure. The one good thing that probably came from it is that Kate Mara and Jamie Bell met here, and they did fall in love and get married and have 2 kids. So those 2 children can owe their existence to Fant Four Stick. I'm sure they're a very happy family. I like both those actors. I'm happy for them. But they will also admit, like, despite the fact that this is where she met her...
Yeah, you say they met on this movie. I mean, did they? I mean, they were both in the movie. Did they
That's a good point.
The movie? They never shared a scene together, because the only time, unless Jamie Bell was, like, the physical... like, you know, dude wearing green leotard for the Thing. He's the Thing by the time he ever is on screen with Kate Mara. So, I mean, I'm sure they met at catering at some point.
Right.
But they never met, like, on camera for this movie.
Okay, so whatever the case, I was going to say, if assuming they did meet on the movie, what is funny is that despite this being the movie where she met her husband, Kate Mara has only ever had bad things to say about the making of this movie, which is amazing. It's amazing to say that the experience where I met my husband is the worst experience of my professional life, is basically what she has said, and I think that is just says a lot. I mean, she's implied that Josh Trank was like a creep, like a lot of things, and I feel bad for her on that. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
What is that? What is it called? The suspension bridge effect, where it's like if two people are in situations with like a heightened sense of like fear, that it causes them to build a relationship really quickly. Maybe it was something like that.
Maybe. Anyway, I mean, good for them. That's like the only productive thing that came out of this. And then the whole franchise collapsed. Obviously, they weren't going to make a sequel based on this. And then Fox got bought by Disney and put out of its misery.
Can you imagine a sequel to this movie? Like, what would you even do? Like imagine you're a director that got handed this project, make a sequel to Fan 4 Stick. Here's Fan 5 Stick. Like, how do you even begin approaching the problem of making a sequel to this movie? Like, I can't conceptualize it.
They had a crack guy on it. They did put Simon Kinberg to start development.
I mean, yeah, if anyone can figure that out, it's got to be the guy who wrote the Dark Phoenix movie. And the
Here's my favorite detail from the Wikipedia page for this movie, Sean. In September 2015, Tommy Wiseau, the director of The Room, expressed enthusiasm in directing a sequel, having personal admiration for the film. That might be the most damning thing. Can you imagine if you made a movie, Sean, and the only person on Earth who liked it was the guy who made The Room? How humiliating that would be? Oh my God.
That is very fucking funny. That's really good.
They should have let him do it. They totally should have let him do it. He would have made a
better movie. I mean, it would have been a more watchable movie, probably.
He could have played Dr. Doom. That would be very funny.
That would actually, he wouldn't be the worst Dr. Doom.
All right. So, Sean, that's the Fantastic Four movies. I mean, Marvel has not had a perfect track record lately. In fact, they've had a pretty bad track record. I am confident that they will make a better movie than 2015.
Oh, God. Yes. I mean, it's just like, basically anything would be. I mean, like you said earlier, it's the worst superhero movie. I mean, it does make any of those other, like, bad superhero movies just look so quaint in comparison, Yes. It's like I would very gladly rewatch the Amazing Spider-Man movies rather than do anything with this. It's like, yes. I really do not like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but those are made by lots of people who are trying to make a Spider-Man movie, and maybe some of the people involved are not very good at it. But it's like, I mean, one thing we did talk about directly was also just how ugly this movie is. I mean, that's one of those things when you're watching it, like, in the sequence where you have the 2005-2007 movie that have these like really bright, vivid look with like real locations and great sets and great prosthetic effects and practical effects for a lot of the stuff. And just that feeling of like, this is a New York City that you could step out into and live in, and it's bright and hopeful and has color to it. And this is it's such the nadir of the kind of modern aesthetics of filmmaking that it's just everything is washed out. It's so dark. The green screen is so glaringly obvious. It like rarely feels like people are on a set, even when they are on a physical set. I never really understand how the fuck these movies do that, but like it's just like you can't believe kind of any moment of it aesthetically. And it's just so oppressively grim in its overall look. And it's just like, and I do think it's really accentuated when you contrast it with the 2005-2007 movie, where it's just so ugly of a film to look at. And it's like, man, I wish that like whatever movies looked like the 2005-2007 movie again. Like I wish that's where we're at, because it's like it's just this kind of aesthetic is so dreadful, and I just hate fucking seeing it and looking at it. It hurts my eyeballs.
I agree. I have been very critical of Marvel and the whole Kevin Feige regime over the last 5 years, because mostly they've made bad movies. I am cautiously optimistic about the new one, Fantastic Four: First Steps. I think the pitch for it is perfect of the way they're doing it in this alternate universe 60s, so it doesn't have to deal with any of the other MCU stuff. I think the aesthetic of it looks really good. I think that cast is fantastic. Particularly for Sue Storm, who is the character they've always struggled the most to get right. That being Vanessa Kirby, who is such a great actress, is really cool. I'm really excited for that. Pedro Pascal, I think, is the perfect kind of actor for Reed Richards. I think The Thing, I kind of wish it was a prosthetic, but the CG looks fine, and it's that original, like, Jack Kirby design that looks really good. The Michael Giacchino score, what we've heard of it so far, is awesome. So, like, I am fingers crossed, because if Marvel can't get this right, Marvel is dead forever. I mean, that's just like, can you imagine if this doesn't work? Like, how do they sell those Avengers movies? How do they, I mean, this is the do or die moment for Marvel, so we shall see. But it would be very nice to get something good out of this fucking franchise, where the best you can say is, we got Rise of the Silver Surfer, and that movie's fine, but man, this series deserves better.
It just so does. And I think that was just like my big takeaway from watching the Tim Story movies, was just like, man, the Fantastic Four are great. Like, it's such a great set of characters. It's such a great, like, premise. And I do want to go back and just read a bunch of those old Stan Lee, Jack Kirby comics from the 60s, especially like that Galactus arc is so good. And it's the right choice for this new movie to do the Galactus story. Like, I just think it's like such the quintessential Fantastic Four storyline. It's just so ridiculously good, and if they can capture what that comic book story did, I think there's just a great movie to be made out of that storyline. That is not really, there's shades of it in The Rise of the Silver Surfer, but it's not really that same plot. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and I'm very hopeful. I have not seen a Marvel movie in a long time. I don't even remember what the last Marvel movie I saw was. Probably Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was maybe the last one. Was Thor Love and Thunder?
That's 2021. That's a while ago now. You would have seen Spider-Man No Way Home. That's after that one, I think. Okay. Or is it? I don't know. No, Spider-Man is before that. Okay. Doctor Strange was 2022. Let me look at the list. We'll quiz you, Sean.
Yes.
Have you seen, let's see, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Oh, there's so many of these. You saw Thor Love and Thunder. I know you saw that. Did you see Black Panther 2?
No.
Did you see Ant-Man 3?
No.
Did you see Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
No.
You should. That one's good. The Marvels?
Nope. I forgot they made that.
Everyone did. Deadpool and Wolverine?
No.
Captain America Brave New World?
Nope.
Thunderbolts?
That's not the full. You mean Thunderbolts asterisk, Jonathan?
Fuck that movie.
Yes. I've not seen it, and I'm irritated every time I see that, like, written in regular text and people add the asterisk, and it just makes me mad.
Yes.
So that's let's say that's the only reason I haven't seen the movie, but that is a reason why I haven't seen the movie. Is it just that irritates me whenever I see that title written out like that.
I actually have seen. I still have seen every Marvel movie except Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And Sean, the other day, I was scrolling through YouTube, and I got a YouTube short of a scene from Ant-Man and the Wasp. It was one of the fun scenes with Michael Pena, that character. And I went, oh man, I really liked those Ant-Man movies. They should make a third one of those. And then I thought for a second, and I went, oh god, they did! And no one watched it, including me.
Wait,
so that's where Marvel's at.
You didn't see that one?
No, that's the only one I haven't seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at the list, it is Thor Love and Thunder is the last one, because that came out shortly after Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So yes, it was Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange 2, and Thor Love and Thunder. That was like my last hurrah with Marvel movies. So I have not seen a new Marvel movie in 3 years.
Well, go see Fantastic Four so we can talk about it. July, we're getting Superman, which looks great. I have so much faith in that movie. And then Fantastic Four, which, God willing, will be good.
They really needed to be.